Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting of the Sterling Heights City Council to order. Please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for the invocation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Dear God, please bless our elected officials, grant them courage and wisdom to do what is right for all citizens.
Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Mrs. McHale. Can we please have the roll call tonight?
Mayor Taylor,
Here.
Mrs. Sarowski,
Here.
Mrs. Koski,
Present.
Mr. Radke,
Present.
Mrs. Schmidt,
Present.
Mr. Yanis,
Here.
Mrs. Ziarko.
Present.
Thank you, Council. We need approval of the agenda.
Mr. Mayor,
Mrs. Koski.
move to approve the agenda and move item 7S to consideration item number 8C.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Is there any discussion? With no discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item on our agenda tonight is a report from our city manager, Mark Vanderpool. Mr. Vanderpool.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to begin by reminding everyone that city offices will be closed for business on July 4th for the Independence holiday. Refuse and recycling pickup will be delayed one day, Thursday through Saturday, and Wednesday, July 3rd, is a regular collection day. Also, the Sterling Heights Parks and Recreation Department is proud to present the 2019 Music in the Park Concert Series, which kicked off Thursday, June 6th. These free concerts are performed at 7 p.m. in Dodge Park, the band shell area, and they coincide with the farmers market, of course. Entertainment for kids varies each week and includes free face painting, airbrush tattoos, and a balloon twister. The music schedule for the remainder of June is as follows. This Thursday will be Crush, which is the best of Bon Jovi. And also for the first time ever, we will be debuting the Patios and Pints, which is going to be a patio area just behind the Upton House where you can purchase craft beer and enjoy music prior to the main concert act beginning at 7 p.m. The Patios and Pints this week will feature Blake's Cider Mill, and they have a number of products that they'll be selling at this special Patio and Pints venue. And there'll be a pre-concert event which will feature Michael Tocco, so you'll be able to listen to some music in a relaxed setting, kind of where the jazz tent area is for Sterling Fest, and you'll be able to do that this Thursday and enjoy some craft beer and then partake in the main concert venue beginning at 7 o'clock. So this is a new experiment, a trial, if you will, a pilot program to attract some craft breweries to Sterling Heights. We don't have any in Sterling Heights, and they're all around us, so we want to promote the market that is here in Sterling Heights, and we're hoping that this will be well received by the community. And then on Thursday, June 7th, will be the Square Pegs, which is an 80s band. They're always popular, and so we look forward to seeing all of you on Thursdays at the Farmers Market, at the Music in the Park, and then also now the new Patios and Pints venue. And you can see our website or social media page for a complete lineup of all the scheduled acts throughout the summer. And Mayor, if you don't mind, I'd like to take a few minutes and update everyone on our many road projects that have already started and are well underway, and many that are still scheduled but haven't quite started yet. So let me just breeze through this. First, let me focus some on neighborhood roads. There will be 36 neighborhood roads that will be improved this summer in one way, shape, or form. 18 will involve a complete reconstruction of the roadway where the entire road is torn out and a new roadway put in. And then in another 18 area local roads, there'll be concrete replacements in various areas. So in total, 36 roads will see improvements. And we're hoping that we can add 3 additional roads. We're working out logistics as we speak and I'll be able to report more details on those roads in the very near future. So this is just an example of some of the neighborhood road work that just started. This particular project is well on its way. This is Viola Drive, and as I mentioned, there'll be about 36 of those. And then in addition to the concrete work, we have a few roads that will see asphalt repavement, and that includes Sterrett Drive from Canal to M59, Fortner Drive from 19 to Wheaton, and then Fox Hill, which is a major project from DeQuinder to Ryan Road, and these are asphalt resurfacing. And then in addition to the local road improvement projects, there are a number of major road projects underway or scheduled. First, many of you certainly remember this section of roadway on Metro Parkway, which is a county road immediately east of Van Dyke. It was one of the worst section of roadway on Metro Parkway, and this is what it looks like now. So it's really good to get this project completed. And then Utica Road, as you know, is well under construction as we speak. This is the first phase of Utica Road this year. The second phase will be, or I should say the third phase will be next year from Hayes to Shaner. The project underway right now is Dodge Park up to Van Dyke. And then also on DeQuinder, there's significant concrete repair work going on from 14 Mile up to Metro Parkway. Some of that work has already started. And then Merrill Road started, I should say, will be starting June 24th. This is a significant project that encompasses from 18.5 up to Dobry Drive. So we're glad to get this project going, and of course will be completed this year. And then Shaner Road will see a number of improvements this year. First, beginning with the first phase for this construction season will be just north of Clinton River up to Canal. Most of the work will be on the west side or southbound, but there will be some work on the east side as well, northbound. But the limits are just north of Clinton River to just a little bit south of Canal. That work will be starting in a few weeks. The second phase of Shaner will be from Plumbrook up to just north of Clinton River. Some logistics are still being worked out with that project. That is anticipated to be completed yet this construction season. We also have 19-mile road resurfacing from Hayes to Shaner Road. It'll be starting within the next couple, 2 to 3 weeks, and there will be some traffic control. In fact, eastbound traffic only will be maintained during the first phase, which is between Hayes and Saul Road. So you can see we have a number of projects planned, and this particular section is 18-mile road from Mound to Ryan. That will be resurfaced. That will be starting after Utica Road is completed. We expect Utica Road to be done in time for Sterling Fest, and then this will be might start right around that time. I already mentioned this. So in conclusion, we have a significant amount of road work planned, tens of millions of dollars for this construction season, and I'll continue to provide updates as we proceed through the construction season. And also, now it's my pleasure to introduce the Macomb County Public Works Office Deputy Commissioner Brian Baker, who's going to give us an update on 2 significant projects going on in our city.
Thank you, Mark. And, Mayor, members of council. I want to go over a couple new projects that we're working on. As you know, when Candace was elected, after she got the 15-mile interceptor repair project going and near completion, she instituted a drain maintenance program throughout the entire county, inspecting some of the drains that hadn't been inspected at all, and making those needed repairs. In Sterling Heights, there were 8 drains that we hired Spalding D. Decker to go ahead and take a look at. 13 miles of underground pipe that were inspected, and the good news is there were no major maintenance issues. found in those 8 drains. We also inspected the Hildebrandt pump station, which I know is near Deanna Koski's house. We found that there's some pumps there and electrical work that needs replacing, and this goes back 40, 50 years for that pump station to prevent flooding in that area. So Spalding designed it, and we've got a project budget of $760,000 that we need. The good news is there are funds available in the drains that we did inspect that are surplus funds. And as you know, we also sold property on Ryan Road near 18.5, 19 Mile in the Hawken Drain. So we have those funds as well. So the great news is we have enough funds for this Hildebrandt project so that we don't need a citywide special assessment or a local drainage district assessment. But we have the funds available, and we just need to transfer those funds. And what we have before you was on consent, has been pulled, is a resolution for the city to request transfer of those surplus funds by the drainage district to cover the Hildebrandt improvements. So with that tonight, we have a brief presentation. Scott Eisenberg from Spalding DeDecker will be discussing the needed Hildebrandt improvements, and Steve Downing from Public Works. He will provide an update on the drain inspections that we did, as well as an update on the Sterling Relief water quality improvement project that we'll be doing. So Scott.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. So as Brian said, I'm Scott Eisenberg from Spalding DeDecker. I was one of the designers on the Hildebrandt project. And with that, I'll give you a little background on Hildebrandt. Hildebrandt Drain serves about 330 acres of subdivision, all west of Hayes Road, about out to Shaner. And the Hildebrandt Drain ends here at a detention basin that acts as a regional detention basin for all of that subdivision. Water comes in through the arrows on the screen from the west, north, and south, and exits with the help of this pump station to the east across Hayes Avenue, Hayes Road. The picture there on the lower left hand of the screen is what you would see of the pump station if you were driving by. It's not much to look at. It is essentially the top of a 25-foot deep steel structure with electrical and control cabinets next to it. And we are proposing to replace all of that as part of the Hildebrandt project. So here we have a look inside the wet well structure. This is part of our inspection that that Spalding DeDecker did. Essentially what we found when we went inside the steel structure that houses the pumps is that the steel structure is in a fair condition. Essentially, looking at the two lower hand corner pictures, you can see erosion and corrosion that's happening to the steel inside the structure. You can see a black film that's also on the steel. That is part of an anti-corrosion paint that should be protecting that steel. It is starting to peel off and come away from the structure. Essentially, this can be repaired, but isn't expensive to do that. So we also looked at the pumps themselves. The pumps are in the center picture there. They were originally placed in 1965. They were then replaced again in 1990. So you got 25 years of life out of those pumps. And here we are in 2019. Pumps need to be replaced again. About 30 years of life out of those pumps. So with that, we kind of took two different approaches with the design. We looked at just repairing and replacing everything, including the steel wet well structure and replacing with new pumps, versus completely constructing a new structure and new pumps altogether. So two design avenues. After looking at the cost breakdown of all that, basically we found that the cost difference between the two alternatives was relatively negligible, about less than $20,000 on a $700,000 project. So with that, better to go with the new structure and new pumps all together. Hold on. So to give you a sense of what we're doing out there, on the left we have what we're going to remove, the station The circle with the pipes down at the bottom of the screen, that will all be removed. It will be staged such that that existing structure will stay in place, providing water to be pumped across Hayes Avenue during construction. And then once the new structure is built and up and running, we'll then take down the existing structure. At the same time, we'll be adding a new gravel parking lot for easier access, and we'll be providing a access route down to the bottom of the basin so that maintenance crews can clean out sediment that deposits at the bottom of the basin more easily. And then lastly, what we'll be doing in addition is we have the option for this project to do some beautification, which is to install 20 Chanticleer pears, if I'm saying that right, pear trees across Hayes Avenue. They're 30-foot tall trees, green foliage with white apple blossom flowering in the spring. Should look pretty nice. We're also proposing to redo the fence along Hayes Avenue because that is in disrepair, missing some pieces, and could use a facelift. So kind of summarize, scope of work is to install a new wet well, remove the existing wet well, also install new electrical systems, and a major improvement is to incorporate the Hildebrandt drain and its pump station into the county SCADA system. This will allow the county to monitor that station remotely from their offices and control it to some extent remotely. We're also planning to put in new fences and new trees, like I said. And the schedule for this work is supposed to go out to bid in July, so next month. And then we're anticipating a fall 2019 construction. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Steve Downing from the county to talk about the other drains in the area.
Thank you, Scott. Mark, Mayor, rest of the council. Again, my name is Steve Downing. I'm with Macomb County Public Works. I'm the Construction and Maintenance Manager. So to build off what Brian and Scott have started to lay out here is we've done a series of inspections in drains throughout Macomb County, not just in Sterling Heights. And in order to prioritize the needed repairs, we've started to catalog these inspection results and find out where our urgent needs are. The Hildebrandt popped up as something that in the very near future is an urgent need for us to get out and address. So the other inspections that we've done, we have been able to prioritize any urgent repairs for those drains, which there were none revealed, but also we've been able to look at where funds are in existing accounts so that we can allocate those funds for priority projects. So, sorry, I hit the button the wrong way here. Here's the Cady Enclosure, one of the drains that was inspected. There was a few minor notes throughout. There's nothing major that needs to be done. We are integrating this into our asset management program so we can add future inspections, maybe a little bit more frequent, and get in and take care of some issues as they arise. Another drain that is part of this resolution is the Diener drain. Similar scenario. This thing is, we have walked it, looked at it. There's low priority maintenance repairs required in there, and we had some funds available. Moving into the green drain, similar. There's a couple of minor issues in there. We're implementing those repairs, but again, they're just very small spot repairs, no major issue to report there. And the Kleino drain, same scenario, few minor things, nothing too major. Those are the four that we've inspected that had some funds available. And then Brian had also mentioned the Hawken drain, the sale of the property. We were able to provide some additional funds for this Hildebrandt project. So that wraps up our drain discussion for the Hildebrandt. Essentially, we are out there inspecting drains, looking for the urgent needs, address those repairs, and then move the funds around from the existing drain accounts so that we can try and manage with the funds that we have instead of special assessments to other districts. Now I'd like to transition into the Sterling Relief Drain project. This is something that's going to be getting underway here real quick. Construction was scheduled to start here in the middle of June. We've been in design since late last year. Get into the location. So the Sterling Relief Drainage District, shown here on the map, is a little over 5 miles of stormwater drain, approximately 4,300 acres of urban drainage. We've got a population of over 27,000 people that live within that area, including businesses. It starts west of Ryan and ends east of Shaner at the Red Run Drain. So it's a large area of land. There's a lot of drainage. The major makeup of that drainage system is the open ditch, which everyone sees, but there's also a 48-inch pipe that's buried there, and that is the direct conduit from the start of the drain to the Red Run drain. So a lot of the smaller events for rain directly go into the drain. There's no filtration, we're not getting any benefit from the actual open channel drain of it. So the EPA and others have provided grant opportunities for clean water. This particular project is targeting an area just over 2 miles. It starts at Van Dyke and goes to the Red Run drain. We started with an EPA grant of about $1.25 million. In the process of securing the design builder for this project, we were awarded a second grant. We talked with the design builder and said, hey, do you think we can throw another mile into this project and capitalize on the additional funds? They said, yeah, and as a bonus, let's tackle east of Shaner. We won't be able to plant as many trees, but we can continue to look for other grant opportunities to plant trees in that area. So we've done that as well. We're working with our planning department, Macomb County, through Green Macomb. Right now, we're looking at another 150 to possibly 400 trees that we can spread out through the project, mostly targeted in that area from Shaner to the Red Run drain. So the ultimate goal of this project is water quality. I've thrown some statistics up here, calculations that were done to show some of the improvements that we can make with this project, removing nitrogen, phosphorus, and the sediment load that is typically carried directly to the Red Run drain and ultimately Lake St. Clair can now be forced to the top in certain cells for natural filtration, native plants. It's a beautification project in many ways, not just visibly, but from the water quality standpoint. The restoration will incorporate native plant species, grasses and flowers both. One of the target species is a plant that monarch butterflies are attracted to, and that's one of the things, monarch butterflies, the population has gone down significantly, so there's a lot of grant opportunities and interest in something like that to restore the habitat. This project includes planting 1,500 plus trees and shrubs. We're narrowing down that final quantity, but we are definitely in the 1,500 range. I've got highlighted here the grant total from both the United States Environmental Protection Agency as well as the National Fish and Wildlife Sustain Our Great Lakes program. And we're continuing to look for additional grant opportunities as well. Progress, we are at complete with preliminary design. We have completed all survey, earthwork, and cell design, and the hydraulic calculations have all been addressed. Plant selection and tree selection is nearly complete, and the landscape design will be finalized here within the next 4 weeks. We have sent letters and flyers to the residents that have properties adjacent to the drain in the project area, giving them the dates and the information so that they can ask questions and be a part of the project. We have posted, or will be posting, I should say, project signs at Dodge Park and at Shaner, two-sided signs, so traffic can see it, people can walk by, pick up flyers, informational. We really want the public to reach out to us and express their interest in some of the things that we're doing out there. And as I mentioned already, we're looking for additional grant opportunities to address the rest of the 3 miles of the drain. As I mentioned, construction is expected to start any day now. We'll be getting into the earthwork and excavation in August, preparing for a planting in mid-September, and we'll be planting right on through probably till late October, early November, and wrapping up the actual planting process this year. The spring of 2020 will be a monitoring period for this project. We can make sure that the plants take, the trees are doing well, and then at that point we get into installing the restrictor plates, which is how we're managing the flows within this drain to bring the water up for the smaller rain events and get some of that natural filtration. And right here is this is actually the signs that'll be on the Shaner Road and Dodge Park corridor. This is a rendering cross-section of what the drain is viewed to look like at about the 3 to 5 year growth period. And I want to thank you all for your time. I have nothing else.
And Mayor, without any questions, that concludes my report this evening.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Vanderpool. Is there anyone on council that has any questions for Mr. Baker or any of the other representatives? from
Mayor
Public
Taylor?
Works? Mrs. Schmidt?
I just have one question, and I believe The last gentleman that spoke could maybe answer this question. I'm passing by there now, I see much more standing water than typically, I mean, well, we all have standing water everywhere. My question is there anything that's gonna be done as far as mosquito control? With that more standing water in there because of the vegetation, is the county planning on doing anything? Please.
To address the standing water comment, so right now, we have not been able to get into that drain to maintain it this year. As everyone knows, it's been extremely wet.
We can't get into our backyards,
Yeah,
so I get it.
It's bad. We do not anticipate this project to increase the amount of standing water. If anything, it should reduce it. There will be drainage put in along the cells, drain tiles, to help dewater the system. So through proper maintenance and that design component, there should not be an increase, and hopefully there will be a decrease in the amount of standing water. The intent is not to create retention or detention basins. It's to bring the water in, filter it, and let it drain out. So it's an in and an out process.
Okay, thank you. I have nothing further.
Council, anyone else? Mrs. Sarowski.
Steve. Sorry.
That's okay.
Tried to catch you really quickly. You were going so fast through your slides, I didn't get to see. What is the total grant amount from both the EPA and the National Fish and Wildlife?
I'm sorry, it's a little over 1.8 million.
1.8
The dollar amount is 1.8352. Yeah.
1.8352. Thank you. That's all, that was my only question.
easy.
Thank you.
Anyone else, council? No, going once? Okay, well, thank you very much. I appreciate it very much. And I think Mr. Vanderpool said that did conclude his manager's report. So with that, we'll move on to the next item on our agenda, which is an ordinance introduction. And this is to introduce the final amendment to the appropriations ordinance for 2018-2019 fiscal year. We have a presentation from our Finance and Budget Director, Jennifer Varney. Mrs. Varney.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Koszybski, and members of council. Toward the end of the fiscal year, the Budget Office prepares a final amendment to the appropriations ordinance to estimate how we expect to finish the fiscal year, which ends June 30th. I'm pleased to report that the general fund revenues are projected to come in $5 million, or 5% higher than originally budgeted. The revenue increase is primarily in 4 areas, as depicted here. Whoops. Sorry about that. First of all, we had higher investment income, and that was due to 3 interest rate hikes by the Federal Reserve during the fiscal year. Our transportation revenue from EMS transport is running higher due to higher runs and higher collection rates than originally anticipated. And we had a small increase in revenue sharing due to receiving the final estimates from the Treasury Department. And the biggest one is a higher personal property tax reimbursement than expected of $3.1 million. And so you may be wondering why the personal property tax reimbursement is coming in so much higher than budgeted. The first reason is that there were legislative changes this year. They passed an amendment to the law which increased the millage rate that we can collect the personal property tax on. It used to be compared, we used to collect on the lowest millage rate between 2012 and 2014, which meant we weren't collecting on Safe Streets or the Parks and Recreation millage. And the law was changed, so now the total millage is actually goes back to 2014. So where we were collecting only on about 12 mills of our loss, now we're at about 15 mills. So that law added about $500,000 to our personal property tax reimbursement. And the remainder is the extra proration that we've talked about the last couple of years. So about $2.5 million is this extra proration of personal property tax. Now, the problem with budgeting this amount changes annually. It's not guaranteed. It's a very complicated formula that's based on the amount of personal property tax throughout the state. So because it's uncertain in nature, and it's going to start phasing out in fiscal year 2021 when we change to a new formula for dividing up the personal property tax losses. So it's not really responsible to use this money to fund ongoing operations. I think of it more like a bonus, and should be used for either to increase our savings or for one-time expenditures, which is what we have been doing. And also, even though this payment is over and above the amount necessary to reimburse our calculated tax losses, we have to understand that we are only getting reimbursed compared to our personal property tax as of 2013. So we're not getting reimbursed on any new growth in the city. And for 2019, the assessing department estimates that we would have had about an additional $40 million in taxable value due to new investment in our community. And that would equate to about $650,000 in taxes. And secondly, these payments, although nice, in no way make up for the cumulative losses we've been seeing in state revenue sharing, road funding, and property taxes over the past 14 years, which, as this chart shows, have totaled nearly $160 million. And again, because this payment is not guaranteed and is really unknown until May, which is almost the end of the budget year, it can't be counted on to fund operations. For the past 2 years, we've used the funds to shore up our fund balance, and it's one of the reasons our reserves are now over $25 million. This year, the final amendment proposes using that money for one-time expenditures to help fund 3 of the city's highest priorities. $2 million increase to the major road fund, which will help fund the reconstruction of Fox Hill Drive from Mound to Carpathia and help fund the rehabilitation of Shaner from 19 Mile to Clinton River. Both of these are additional projects that were not included in the original budget. And $1.5 million to local roads, which will help fund the nearly $7 million of neighborhood street projects in next year's budget, as well as 2 new projects that are yet to be named. And lastly, we're proposing $1 million contribution to the Police and Fire Pension Fund. This contribution is in addition to the required contribution of $9.1 million. The Police and Fire Pension Fund is currently at 62.9% funding level, and additional contributions over and above the required amount will help increase that percentage over time. The net result of the amended general fund budget is a $990,000 increase to fund balance. That's about $50,000 more than originally budgeted, and will bring the total general fund reserves to $25.7 million, which is about 23.2% of budgeted expenditures. Now, the budget for the other city funds increased by about $480,000, and this was primarily due to additional costs for Merrill Road and Canal Road, advanced spending for the local road reconstruction that was approved in the 1920 budget, the purchase of 2 additional ambulances, and the grant-funded video conference system for the fire department. And these are offset by a reduction to the facilities project fund due to the timing of expenditures. Mr. Mayor, this is the first reading of this ordinance, which is scheduled for adoption at the first meeting in July.
Okay, thank you very much, Mrs. Varney. Mr. Baker, anything for old time's sake here on the budget? No?
He's not allowed to ask.
Take a pass. Anyone in the audience who would like to speak on this item? If not, Mr. Marshallons.
My name's Harry Marshallons. I'm a citizen of the United States and a resident of Sterling Heights. In hearing Mr. Baker's protege, both very talented people, are we really supposed to understand or make any sense of what she just said? I mean, what's it all about? Did we make money this year or did we lose money this year? Or did we make money last year? Or are we going to lose money? For those of us that don't have a doctorate degree in finance, can somebody just break this down for us laymen? Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Marshallons. Anyone else in the audience on this item? If not, council, we need a motion.
Mayor Taylor,
Mrs. Zarko.
resolved to introduce the final amendment to the appropriations ordinance for the 2018-19 fiscal year.
Support.
Been moved and supported. Is there any discussion, Mrs. Zarko?
Thank you, Mayor Taylor. The only thing I can say is I am really excited about putting an extra $1 million into the pension fund. I know we worry about liability costs, and as long as we have the money, I'm glad that we're saving it, so thank you very much for doing that. And I don't know if you want to meet with Mr. Marcelona on a one-to-one basis, and maybe you can explain it to him how this is a good thing. Nothing further.
Mrs. Schmidt, anything?
Nothing.
Council, anyone else?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Radke.
I just wanted to add that I appreciated putting $50,000 more into our reserves to hopefully save for a rainy day if one ever comes, which we've experienced a lot this year, but luckily we don't have to spend it. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Very true. Council, anyone else?
Thank you.
With no further discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Next item on our agenda tonight is the consent agenda with the omission of consent agenda item S, I believe.
Yes.
Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to speak on any item on tonight's consent agenda? If not, council, we need a motion.
Mr. Mayor,
Mrs. Koski.
move to approve the consent agenda as amended.
Support.
Been moved and supported with no discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Next item on our agenda tonight is to consider nominations to City of Sterling Heights boards and commissions. Okay, so we have, just so I'm clear on this, we've got a couple that still need to be nominated. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So we've got 4 that need to be nominated, and these are from the Board of Ordinance Appeals, 1 alternate, 2 alternate, and ZBA. So we'll start with Board of Ordinance Appeals 1. This is an open seat. City Council has the power of appointment to a term ending June 30th, 2022. Is there anyone who has a nomination for this board?
Mayor Taylor,
Mrs. Schmidt.
I'd like to move to postpone this for 2 meetings. I have someone that had reached out to me that was interested and has not submitted the application yet.
Okay. So I
So the second meeting in July,
entertain a motion to postpone to the
Postpone.
second meeting in July.
yes, the appointment for the Board of Ordinance Appeals 1.
Okay, it's been moved. Is there a second?
Support.
It's been moved and supported with no discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Next is the Board of Ordinance Appeals 1 alternate. This is also an open position to a term ending June 30th, 2022. Is there anyone who has an appointment to this, or a nomination to this board? If not, I would entertain a motion, and I'd like this to be adjourned to the second meeting in July. If there are going to be any adjournments or postponements, I should say, I'd request that they be the second meeting in July. So entertain a motion to postpone BOA 1 alternate to the second meeting in July.
So moved.
Support. It's been moved and supported with no discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. BOA 2 alternate, entertain a motion to postpone to the second meeting in July.
So moved.
Support, moved and supported with no discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Next is the Zoning Board of Appeals, open position, City Council power of appointment with a term ending June 30th, 2022. Is there anyone who has a nomination for this board? If not, I will say, I don't know if I'm allowed to make nominations. Am I?
Is it council appointment?
City Council appointment. Well, I've spoke with Eric Castiglia, and he's interested in serving on this board. He has a application on file, and if anyone would be interested in making that a nomination, I would support it.
Mayor Taylor,
Mrs. Zarko.
move to nominate Eric Castilla to, for consideration as an appointee to the Zoning Board of Appeals at the July 16th regular city council meeting.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Is there any discussion?
Excuse me, Mayor Taylor?
Yes.
I know that the resolution, or the motion is July 2nd, but are we doing all of the appointments on the second meeting in July, or?
Well, I'm just not going to be at the July 2nd meeting, so I don't think it's necessary for me to be there to vote on it.
Okay.
But
So then,
the 2nd or 16th, I think the only reason maybe the 2nd might be better is if we want to have him, on the board.
Okay,
sooner rather than later.
all right, so then I'll change, can I withdraw my motion and then make another motion?
Sure.
Whoever supported? can-
Withdraw my support.
Okay. Resolve to appoint Eric Castilia to the.
To nominate.
Oh, yes, for the consideration as an appointee to the Zoning Board of Appeals at the July 2nd, 2019 regular city council meeting. Support.
It's been moved and supported.
July 2nd again.
Yeah, that's what.
Yeah, July 2nd is what we want.
Okay, okay.
She said July 16 the first time.
July
So
2nd.
we've got a motion to nominate Eric Castilia to the zoning board of appeals for appointment at the July 2nd meeting. Is there anyone who has any discussion on the motion?
Mr. Taylor,
Mr. Radke?
briefly, how many boards will he be serving on now?
You know,
3?
I think
or-
it's 3. I think one of them is the Citizens Advisory Commission, and Zoning Board of Appeals, and I'm not sure what the other one was.
Would he be giving up one, or would he serve his, I think it's 3, but I'm not quite sure, so.
Well, I will tell you, in his personal discussions with me, he expressed an interest in serving on, a board. I don't want to put words in his mouth, and I don't remember exact words he said, but a board that has a little bit more responsibility than whatever board he was on. What I would suggest is, if you want to reach out to him and see if he would be interested in resigning from one board in order to serve on this board, that's certainly something that you.
I was just curious.
Yeah.
Thank you, that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, anyone
Mayor,
else?
yes.
This is Zarko.
Only to clarify, I don't think that there is a limit to the number of boards that a person can serve on because of the meeting. Some meetings are quarterly, some meetings are every month, and some are every other year. So I don't think there's a limit as to how many commissions that you can be on, because of the way the commissions meet. That's all.
Right, okay, thank you, Mrs. Zarko. Anyone else? With no further discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, next item is to consider appointments to the City of Sterling Heights Boards and Commissions. Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to speak on this item? Mr. Jefferson.
Charles Jefferson, Sterling Heights. I was looking at this meeting at home at the last meeting. A couple years ago, the citizens of Sterling Heights got their communication minutes taken down from 7 to 4 minutes. At that time, I asked Mayor Taylor if he did anything throughout the year to make these meetings go by faster. At that time, it was no, it just take the communications from the citizens down from 7 to 4 minutes. Now, this is a perfect opportunity because I was listening to at the last meeting, was people put on the planning commission who were already appointed to the planning commission. They got nominated to be on the planning commission only to be appointed at this meeting to be put on the planning commission. In that, it seems like it was a waste of time. That's a waste of time, no doubt. This is the two-step process that we have here in Sterling Heights. That came years ago because someone didn't know anyone, and the rest of the people at the time cowered to that person. So, since this person was nominated, since these 3 people were nominated for the position, Mr. Yanez, I'm going to ask you a question. In that 2 weeks, what did you find out? See, this goes back to what Mr. Radke was just talking about. He could call that person to ask them if they could leave a position, because that was a nominated position to appoint a position. What he's supposed to do was ask questions and find out. See, Mr. Yanez, if I was you, I would ask the question to those people. How do you feel about working with a person who wants Sterling Heights residents hog-tied, lynched, and killed? And that's, no doubt, it's been proven up here time and time again. That person wanted people hog-tied, lynched, and killed under the ISIS flag. Did you ask that question to the 3 nominees? Mr. Rowski, did you call and ask those people, those three same people, how did they feel working with a person who says if we're not all born equally, why should we be treated equally? It's been proven up here time and time again. Now the question is, where can we find the answer to those questions? See, that's what the purpose of the nominated portion was to the appointed person, because it was under the disguise that the residents needed to know. And we never can find out the answer. The city clerk's not going to give us the information to call private citizens up here for the citizens to call another private citizen and ask them that question. City clerk's not going to do that. So we have to rely on you. So where can we find out this information? Or if not, process was a waste of time. It's always, my eyes, it's always been a waste of time. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Jefferson. Anyone else on this item? If not, we will take this item. There are there's two sections here. The first is going to be those appointments that are made under the two-step process. The second will be those made under the one-step process. We're going to take this a little bit differently than we did last time, unless there's any objection. The first suggested action is for appointments to the Planning Commission. We have three appointments, three nominations that are up for appointment today. All three, Paul Jaboro, Gerald Rowe, and Parmpreet Sarao, are up for appointment to the Planning Commission to a term ending June 30th, 2022. So I would entertain a motion for all three of those at the same time, unlike last week.
Mayor Taylor,
Mrs. Schmidt.
resolve to appoint Paul Jaboro, Gerald Rowe, Pompreet Sarao to the Planning Commission to a term ending June 30th, 2022, subject to the appointees meeting the qualifications set forth in Charter 4.03 and taking the oath of office within 2 weeks.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Is there any discussion? No discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The next is for appointment to the Board of Code Appeals. This is one appointment, and it's for Mr. Douglas Harvey. Is there anyone who'd like to make that motion?
Mr. Taylor?
Mr. Radke.
Mayor Taylor, excuse me. Resolve to appoint Douglas Harvey to the Board of Code Appeals to a term ending June 30th, 2024, subject to the appointee meeting the qualifications set forth in Charter Section 4.03 and taking the oath of office within 2 weeks.
Support. It's been moved and supported. Is there any discussion? With no discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next is an appointment to the Board of Ordinance Appeals 1, and this is for the appointment of Kathleen Martin. Is there a council member who would like to make this motion?
Mayor Taylor?
Mrs. Sarowski.
Resolved to appoint Kathleen Martin to the Board of Ordinance Appeals 1 to a term ending June 30th, 2022, subject to the appointee meeting the qualifications set forth in Charter subset 4.03 and taking the oath of office within 2 weeks.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Is there any discussion? With no discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next is the appointment to the Board of Ordinance Appeals 1 alternate for Mr. Sauger. Is there anyone who'd like to make that motion?
Mayor Taylor?
Mr. Radke.
Resolve to appoint Michael Sauger to the Board of Ordinance Appeals 1 alternate to a term ending June 30th, 2022, subject to the appointee meeting the qualifications set forth in Charter Section 4.03, taking the oath of office within 2 weeks.
Support.
Been moved and supported. Is there any discussion? With no discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next is appointment to the Board of Ordinance Appeals 2. There are two appointments, Aisha Faruqai and Michael Sauger, both ending June 30th, 2022. So we'll take these both at the same time. Council?
Mayor Taylor,
Mrs. Schmidt.
resolve to appoint Alicia Faruqai and Michael Sauger to the Board of Ordinance Appeals 2 to a term ending June 30th, 2022, subject to the appointees meeting the qualifications set forth in Charter Section 4.03 and taking the oath of office within 2 weeks.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Is there any discussion? With no discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next is the appointment to the Board of Review. Kimberly Legarski and Betty Jane Sukar, both to terms ending June 30th, 2022. Council?
Mayor Taylor?
Mayor Pro Tem Sarowski.
Resolved to appoint Kimberly Legarski, and Betty Jane Sukar to the Board of Review to a term ending June 30th, 2022, subject to the appointees meeting the qualifications set forth in Charter subsection 4.03 and taking the oath of office within 2 weeks.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Is there any discussion?
No.
With no discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next is the appointment to the General Employees Retirement System Board, term for Mr. Richard Weiler. Is there anyone who'd like to make that motion?
Mayor Taylor,
Mrs. Zarko.
resolve to appoint Richard Weiler to the General Employees Retirement System Board to a term ending June 30th, 2022, subject to the appointee meeting the qualifications set forth in Charter 4.03 and taking the oath of office within 2 weeks.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Is there any discussion? With no discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next is the appointment to the Zoning Board of Appeals. There are two seeking reappointment, David Graff and Raymond Washburn, both to terms ending June 30th, 2022. Council.
Mayor Taylor.
Mrs. Schmidt.
Resolved to appoint David Graff and Raymond Washburn to the Zoning Board of Appeals to a term ending June 30th, 2022, subject to the appointees meeting the qualifications set forth in Charter 4.03 and taking the oath of office within 2 weeks.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Is there any discussion? With no discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, the next one is the Corridor Improvement Authority, and unfortunately, the names are not on this, so I have a name, I wrote it down, I didn't bring it, and I apologize. It's going to take me, Stephen Palmaville. I spoke with Mr. Palmaville today and asked if he was still interested in serving on the Corridor Improvement Authority. He listed it as the #1 board that he wanted to serve on. Like I said, I spoke with him today, and he is still interested in serving and would appreciate the appointment. So as somebody would make the motion for Stephen Palmaville to the Corridor Improvement Authority.
Mayor Taylor.
Mrs. Sarowski.
Resolved to appoint Stephen Palmaville to the Corridor Improvement Authority to a term ending June 30th, 2023, subject to the appointee meeting the qualifications set forth in Charter subsection 403 and taking the oath of office within 2 weeks.
Support. It's been moved and supported. Is there any discussion?
No.
With no discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The next is the Ethnic Community Committee, and this is an open seat with a mayoral power of appointment to a term ending June 30th, 2022. This individual, the individual that I'm recommending is Stacy Williams. I spoke with Ms. Williams over the phone today. She also requested to be appointed to the Ethnic Community Committee as her #1 priority, and I believe she'd be a great fit for this, so I would appreciate someone making that motion.
Mayor Taylor,
Mrs. Zarko.
on the recommendation of the mayor, resolved to appoint Stacy Williams to the Ethnic Community Committee to a term ending June 30th, 2022, subject to the appointee meeting the qualifications set forth in Charter 4.03 and taking the oath of office within 2 weeks.
Support.
Been moved and supported. Is there any discussion? With no discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next is the Historical Commission to an open seat ending June 30th, 2022. This is a council appointment. Council, anyone have a appointee for this? If not, I would entertain a motion to postpone the Historical Commission opening to the July 16th, 2019 City Council meeting.
So moved.
Support.
It's been moved and supported with no discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next is the Library Board of Trustees, an open seat ending June 30th, 2022. This is a council appointment. Council, is there anyone who has an appointee?
Mayor Taylor,
Mrs. Zarko.
resolved to appoint Terry Hojanaki to the Library Board of Trustees to a term ending June 30th, 2022, subject to the appointee meeting the qualifications set forth in Charter 4.03 and taking the oath of office within 2 weeks.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Is there any discussion? With no discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Last is the Solid Waste Management Commission. This is an open seat. Council has the power of appointment to a term ending June 30th, 2022. Is there anyone who has an appointee? If not, I would entertain a motion to postpone this item to the July 16th, 2019 City Council meeting.
So moved.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. With no discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries, and that completes that agenda item. Next item on our agenda tonight is Item S from the consent agenda, which is now 8C. This is to adopt a resolution requesting transfer of Chapter 20 drain funds pursuant to MCL 280.499 to fund the replacement of the Hildebrandt pump station. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak on this item? If not, council, we need a motion.
Mayor Taylor.
Mrs. Zarko.
Resolve to adopt the resolution requesting transfer of Chapter 20 drain funds pursuant to MCL 280.499 to fund the replacement of the Hildebrandt pump station.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Radke.
I had some brief questions for Mrs. Varney, through the chair. I had to pull them up, I'm sorry. I was curious about this item because I've never seen it come before the council before in any form. Could you tell us about how we move drain funds between the different accounts and why there are remaining drain funds in those accounts?
Sure, so I looked up, the agenda statement has 5 different drain funds. So I looked in, old budget books, and, so these are all were funded through bond proceeds. So the county, fixed the drains, borrowed money, and then we paid the payments. So they were, and those payments were passed on to city residents through a millage, a drain millage. So those 5, drains that they're proposing to move the funds, all were financed through bond proceeds, and so there's money left over. So we borrowed a certain amount of money. Now there's money left over. Maybe the project came in a little bit under. We also can earn investment income on bonds. So each of these funds had money left over, and as in the case of the Hawken drain, as Mr. Baker mentioned, there was a sale of land. So there's money sitting in these accounts that was specifically borrowed for these drains. So you can't just spend it on anything. So it's just sitting there, and so now the proposal is to move that because those drains don't need any significant construction to fund this project, which is, it's a legal use of the money to move it to another drain, as opposed to, you can't just use it for anything.
And because it's just remaining in those accounts?
It's just sitting there. If we don't move it, just sits there, it continues to accumulate interest until which time that maybe the county finds the money to spend for that particular drain. But as the presentation indicated, those are all in good shape, so it could sit there indefinitely.
If we don't move the drain funds, what would the assessment be for homeowners who this drain serves, the Hildebrandt drain?
Yeah, we estimated there's about 800 parcels in that district, and the 850 would be about $900 each if we did a special assessment district.
That's a lot of money for a homeowner. I'm going to support this. I think this is a good use of funds, and I'm glad that we're using, past tax proceeds to pay for improvements that are necessary. I just wanted to make one point here, which is I find it fascinating that we levy millages for drains and roads, but then we assess homeowners for sidewalk, which they're all for public use and they're all for public purposes, and I think maybe the city needs to reevaluate that policy. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Radke. Is there anyone else that would like to speak on this item? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next item on our agenda is communications from citizens, and this is the portion where residents and non-residents can speak on any item that was not on tonight's agenda. I see there's a big crowd here tonight, and I see, if you don't come to a lot of council meetings, there's only a few regulars that come every time. So I just want to make sure that everybody knows kind of what the ground rules are for communications from citizens. Like I said, you can talk about any item that was not on tonight's agenda. Everyone has the right to speak. If you're here, and you want to speak, you can speak. You'll get 4 minutes to speak. There's a green light that'll come on, and there's a timer there too. The green light will be on for the first 3 minutes, then there'll be a yellow light for the next minute, and then a red light comes when your time is up. And I just kindly and respectfully ask you, if you're speaking and you get to the end of your time, try to wrap it up within a couple seconds so that we can keep things moving along. Another thing is, if everyone's here to speak on a similar topic, that's fine. You can all have your say, but we just ask that you try not to repeat the same things that a previous speaker said. If you have something new to add, we certainly want to hear it. If you just want to repeat what somebody before said, you're entitled to do that too. But I can, from my standpoint, if you give us new information or fresh information from your perspective, that's always going to be helpful to the council. So with that, I see Mrs. Early has already
Go back and forth.
came up. Oh, yeah, and the other thing is, good point. We don't engage in back and forth. So you can make your comments. If you have questions, we'll answer them after the end, but we're not going to answer questions while you're up here speaking. So this is your 4 minutes to speak, and you get that entire 4 minutes. And like I said, we will sit and listen and take notes of everything you say, and we ask that we will be respectful of your time, and we ask that you give us the same courtesy when the council potentially has some comments at the end. So with that, Mrs. Early.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council members, and residents. I'm Jasmine Early, Sterling Heights resident, and I'm here to speak on behalf of the residents that live by the proposed nature trail that goes from Delia Park to Bowman Hospital. Here, if you could please give us the camera. Thank you. It's a long project. Sorry. Yes, I know, I'm sorry. Yes.
Yeah.
It's a long project, but it's important to have the plans here so residents can use it. The project goes from Bowman Hospital to Delia Park. I had spoken with many of the residents, and it is of great concern that the city administration is planning to build a trail by their backyard, literally by their backyard. In the meeting in January 2019, Mr. Vanderpool highlighted, quote, highlighted the benefits of living near and having access to amenities like a trail. He claimed it will, quote, reduce crime, increase home values, increase quality of life, increase enjoyment by residents of all ages, end of quote. Although it may look good in paper, it does not work for the residents living by the Plum Brook Drain area. Having projects like this one is more likely to do the opposite, increase crime, decrease home values, and diminish their quality of life. The trail proposes 10-foot gravel path, mentions tree preservation, and that you will be mindful of residents' privacy. Now, let me ask you, what tree preservation are you talking about? You are going to be cutting a lot of trees, which currently provides natural barrier between the drain and the residents' backyards. Remember what the city chapter mandates as the purpose of tree preservation. Article 3, Item 5136, Purpose A5. Respond to the public concern for the preservation of those natural resources in the interest of health, safety, general welfare of the residents of the city. The general welfare of the residents of the city will be put in jeopardy if you proceed with this project. Residents had already had break-ins, and the trail is an easy path for thieves to escape. You are not taking in consideration the safety of the residents. Now, what about the cost invested in an unnecessary trail? A document entitled Park and Non-Motorized Facilities, Capital Improvement Priorities for Sterling Heights states that the cost is expected to be between $1 to $1.5 million. Is that number accurate? With the current condition of the drain, the cost to all residents is expected to be much higher. What the drain needs to have is to be cleaned up and maintained. Conversations with several residents in the area determined that no one of them received a written notification that this is happening by their backyard. Why? Shouldn't they be notified since they are going to be literally affected? None of you took the time to go and check where the project will be located, who will be affected, and if it was feasible and proper to build it there. these pictures, and I'm gonna start with this one because it's really interesting, the design is in the area.
Mrs. Early, that
Shows
concludes your
that
time.
they don't need the trail there, and beside that,
Ms. Early, it's not even on the
Thank-
screen, but that concludes your time. Thank you very much. Take you next, sir.
John Fack from,
Please come speak at this podium if you don't mind.
John Fack from Sterling Heights, Forest View. I'd also like to comment on the trail. It's the first time I've heard of this trail. We moved in about 2 years ago, less than 2 years ago, because we wanted to move to a quiet cul-de-sac and enjoy some nature. We have wild turkeys and deer in this forest area that we enjoy, and they'll be disrupted by this trail. And not to mention all the trash accumulation and public safety concerns. To me, I don't believe it will increase the property values. It will reduce our privacy and most likely increase the noise there. The main reason why we moved there was for a quiet area, and I feel that will be disrupted by having this trail. And we should have been notified by written communication or some other means, so we would have known about this before and made a public comment, because everything is already planned, the trees are already marked, and no one really knew about this till today, thanks to Miss Jasmine. So I'd like you to consider maybe postponing the project or canceling it. Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you, sir. I'll take you next, sir. Front row.
I'm JJ Liao. I live in 3124 Chesapeake Drive, just in front of John. I totally support John and also Jasmine's point of view. We moved there because the privacy, because the quiet. There's a lot of tree over there. But later on, and this year, we find, why somebody's going to the forest, do something. And later on, we go there, we find this mark. I'm sure you can see that. We find this mark.
So make sure, there's all that paper, which
Okay.
is
Yeah.
unnecessary, but there's
Okay,
an
here.
area you should be able to see.
Okay, we find a tree on this mark, okay?
Move it up.
And there's another.
Move it up, sir. Closer to me. No, move the phone closer to me.
There
Yeah,
you
there you
go.
go.
Oh, here, okay. And this mark is sit inside of the tree, so not it's very hard to see that from outside. We need to go inside, and then we can see this. So my feeling is that this project is undergoing, in a way, try to prevent our neighborhood to understand that this is no good. This is no good. Okay, I would highly recommend that before proceed with this project, you need to get all the neighborhood agree with that. Okay, at least listen our opinion. Okay, do not go in this way. This kind of sneaky way. This is not good for all the neighborhood. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. Take you next, sir. I'll stay in the middle, and then I'll move over to the left side of the portion, just so it's easy for me to kind of remember who's been called, all right?
Hi, my name is Radu Bautazato. I live in Forest View Subdivision, Chesapeake cul-de-sac. I just want to tell you, just looking at the plans and everything, my house will be very affected by this trail. My house sits the most, it is the closest one to the woods over there that you're gonna cut down. And the trail is gonna be, I'm gonna be the first house, the closest house to the trail. So in that area, my house has a master bedroom, and I'm really concerned about, traffic, about people walking nighttime. I can tell you right now, because I live in that cul-de-sac, I go in the morning, I can pick up a lot of alcohol bottles thrown by people who come at night, and they walk, and they, chat, and I can hear them. And I'm telling you, from my point of view, I think this is gonna downgrade the value of my house. Another thing I'll be worried, in that area, the trail is gonna be the closest to the cul-de-sac, and I can see people coming and parking their cars and walking through the woods or through the open area straight to the trail. That's a big concern because it will increase the traffic, which we tried, kind of to avoid it by I tried to avoid it by buying a house in a cul-de-sac to be quiet and to be more relaxed. I think that will be a big issue from my perspective. So I would like to suggest, to really consider our opinion or my opinion, because this, I can see how this will affect my lifestyle. I'm getting ready to retire, and I'm looking, to spend a quiet retirement. I don't want to chase kids, drinking or whoever, they may do in that area. Okay, so that's all I have to say. I hope you will consider this, and you will kind of try to not build this trail. Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. Take you next, sir.
Hello, my name is Johnson Achu. I live on 43370 Pondview. This is the first time I've ever been to a city hall meeting, so that's kind of neat. But anyway, they've said pretty much probably everything you guys need to hear, really. A couple other things I want to touch on is I built my house. I was one of the first people in that subdivision. I was 26 years old. I personally bought that lot. I paid $20,000 premium for that lot because of the nature preserves. And I never thought in my wildest dreams that you guys would even consider putting a trail through a bike trail. I don't think it's needed. I ride bikes. I have a 5- and 6-year-old, that play around the woods. We see all kinds of animals, things like that. I think it's pointless. I don't see where this is coming from. And the biggest thing really is that I can't believe that as a resident, was not even aware till last night. This lady I don't even know put something on my door letting me know this. I mean, I'm kind of shocked, and most people are here too. So I'm totally against this, and honestly, if this happens, I would definitely put my house for sale. I'd move out of Sterling Heights. That would be very good.
Okay, thank you, sir. Who'd like to be next from this, Miss Linda Comer?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I too am affected, our neighborhood, Sterling Hunt Club, condominiums, in regards to this trail. And number one, I need you guys to help me to understand the benefit of connecting Delia Park to a parking lot, because that's where the other end is at Beaumont. So totally don't understand that at all. Several of my neighbors, their backyards are very close to where this trail's gonna be. And there are kids, there are grandkids, they play back there. We worry about safety. Mr. Mayor, I heard you speaking yesterday about your house and how you have a fenced-in yard so your children are protected. We can't have that. We are not allowed fences, so kind of don't have that. That took my time. But anyway, we are very concerned about this, and the fact that we weren't notified. I just heard happenstance. It wasn't through Mrs. Early, but she has been walking around the neighborhood letting people know, because this is concerning. We worry about the litter. We worry about the wildlife. So that's my concern, and I just don't understand the value here. Separately from all that, you guys did our roads last year, 1 1/3 of the 3. We're very happy, for the most part, have a few issues, that's separate. But we need our one street, Northampton, to be worked on. We need some patchwork, and we need it this year, because we don't have sidewalks, so it's dangerous for us. I don't know where the square is. I have this issue.
Right in the center.
You see here.
Oh, I can't see.
Maybe later.
It's gonna turn on.
Okay, so this one here is, you can't see how deep it is, but it's on Hunt Club Boulevard, and definitely needs some patching, because like I said, we walk in the streets, we don't have sidewalks, so it's not safe. And then another huge problem is on, you did 1/3 of Northampton, the other 2/3, we have major crevices in the street. This is one of them. That, and these are in front of homeowners' houses. So you go and step off the driveway, and this is what we have. You can't tell how deep it is, but it is. So we definitely need some patchwork done, and hopefully considered next year to possibly get the other 2/3 of Northampton redone like we have the other streets. So we would appreciate that consideration. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mrs. Comer. Anyone else in the middle section? Yes, you, ma'am.
Angela Kerner, Sterling Heights, and I live on Northampton, so everything Linda said. And I believe what Jasmine was trying to show before, where is, am I in the right spot? The ordinance, this, so we're kind of trying to figure out how that works, if it's unlawful to cut it down, how the actual ordinance works, so that way we can understand the change. We also moved into Sterling Heights in 2016, and one of the reasons we bought the place was for the backyard. It directly looks, the creek comes directly towards us, so we can see it, and then it's gonna curve, so there's a berm, and then shortly thereafter is where they're supposed to put this 10-foot path. So it's gonna horribly impinge on me, and so I have concerns about that. We also have concerns about the debris, because my husband and I randomly go down 19 Mile Road and Ryan Road and pick up garbage because, you know, bags of garbage, because it never gets picked up. So that's a concern. Destroying the nature. I can show you another picture just taken Sunday morning, real quickly. What we stand to lose, because how is that going to affect the deer population, which this isn't the greatest picture, but we get tons of deer coming through, turkey, whatever. So that's another concern for us to, you know, what's going to happen to them? Are they going to be, will that be disturbed and, you know, not have that anymore? You guys built new sidewalks and redid DeQuinder. Why can't they use the new streets or the new sidewalks on DeQuinder to go to 18 Mile Road, take the left and go to Dahlia Park? So that's, you know, just some of the things that, you know, we're concerned about, and especially the kids. I have grandkids, and it's going to be difficult to be able to let them play out there with, you know, potential strangers coming through the path. So that and security to our homes. Thank you.
All right, thank you, ma'am. Who'd like to be next on this item? Mr. Jefferson? You can talk about anything, except for what was on the agenda.
Right on, right on.
And you can't
Charles
violate our
Jefferson,
council
Sterling
rules.
Heights. Mr. Koski, don't it sound just like what it used to be when they was building a subdivision for these people? See, some of you guys ain't been around here a long time like me and Mrs. Koski. What I really wanted to talk about is, I hope these people here listening to me to call the Sterling Heights Chamber of Commerce so we can have a Meet the Candidates night instead of Meet the Candidates morning like it's been forever. And then you guys can personally ask these people questions And if they don't give you the satisfactory answer like you need, like you want, then you can do what you have to do, like Mrs. Ziarko over there. She doing the Ziarko two-step, the backwards two-step, I should say, because she was adamant that we have a sunset clause on the Safe Streets millage. And I want you people to go back 6 years and look at that. She was very, very adamant. Last meeting, they put that back onto the ballot, and her tune has changed. So ask her, why has her tune changed from being so adamant? And over the 6 years, what have you done to get that millage off of the people, since it came with a sunset clause, and now we putting it right back onto the ballot? Well, what did you do to take it off, since you were so adamant about not having it on there? Next question, we can ask Mike Radke. Mike Radke, why did you call last week Miss Early a racist? Oh, why did you call her a racist during last week? When, yes, you did. And we have a person sitting on the planning commission that is a racist that you backed. You guys will not refuse to get him off the planning commission. We all saw what he done or did. We all found it offensive. You found it offensive, but yet you still didn't say nothing about it. So why did you call Ms. Early a racist, but you won't call that guy out? And we in the public, we ain't taking that apology, because he didn't apologize to us. He just apologized because he got caught. So people, please help me in calling the Sterling Heights the Sterling Heights Chamber Regional Council. I'll call them the crooks, but you could call them the Chamber of Council, and ask for a Meet the Candidates night. We have had in the past Meet the Candidates night, but the incumbents refuse to show up to any of those events. They need to show up. They need to ask questions from the people. They won't really answer your questions tonight. So you corner them one-on-one, face-to-face. Don't be scared. Do what you got to do. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Mr. Jefferson. Who else in the center portion? I'll take you next, sir.
Good afternoon, Mayor. Good afternoon, City Council. I've been living in the city of Sterling Heights since 1993. From 93 to 2001, I used to live in 17 Mile in Ryan. Then when we had the opportunity to buy the lot behind this creek, we moved in, we bought the lot, we built the new house in 2002. The reason for that, we are looking for privacy, security, and safety area. My backyard is just very close to the creek. I have 4 kids. So if you guys gonna build that trail at night, it's gonna be just like anybody can walk into my backyard. So I'm gonna be really very worried about safety of my kids, security, plus the nature that we have deer in our backyard all the time. And today, just my kids, they were feeding a deer. So, and this is just the video that no, 1 second. No, it's a video. 1 second.
Double tap. Tap that.
Oh, for some reason.
There you go.
And with my daughter also feeding, the deer was eating from her hand. So really, I'm very worried about my kids' safety, having that trail on my back of my backyard, which is only like 20, 30 feet is going to be from it. We have a big house with the big windows, and you never know what is going to happen during night. So I really appreciate, and I please to reconsider this one. And the other thing, just last week was the first time we heard from Jasmine. We never received any letter. Just like I said, we've been in this house since 2002. So we were totally surprised about this. So please try to reconsider this decision. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, sir. Anyone else from the center portion? Yes, sir.
Hello, Mr. Mayor, everybody. He's my neighbor, and I live at 42450 Fluss Drive. We bought 2 lots, one for us, and my neighbors, actually, they are my parents, and we built 2 houses on them in 2002. And the reason we bought them, just like everybody else said, privacy, nobody behind us, nature. And I am not really happy about this trail that you guys are building back there. It doesn't make sense to build that trail. All we're gonna find is people we don't know walking behind our house. Just like Leah said, we have big houses, we have big windows. Everybody's gonna be looking at us while they're walking. It just does not make sense. Please reconsider building that trail. I'm against it, and so is my parents against it, and everybody else here. And thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, sir. Anyone else in the center portion? Yes, sir.
My name is Don Cornelli, and I'm a Sterling Heights resident. And we lived in Sterling Heights since 1996. And when we bought this house, we bought it with the backyard with the privacy that we thought was going to be there forever. The removing of trees and disruption of wildlife for a nature trail, I don't agree with at all. And one of the biggest things that bothers me is the fact that how I found out about it. We live right on the trail. We have no trees in between the creek and our property. So there's no natural barrier there. And to find out, from basically a guy walking through our backyard putting stakes with little tags on it, what they were doing was kind of upsetting. And why we didn't find out from a letter from whoever, I don't understand that. That's all I have.
All right, thank you, sir. Anyone else? Yes, Miss in the back.
Good evening. I'm Kathy Borovic. I moved to Sterling Heights 5 years ago with my husband, and we have 2 small children. So the biggest concern for me is the security, because the trail will be right behind our house where the kids play. My second concern is, as everybody mentioned, the nature. Not only the animals, but I think the trees themselves, because they do provide protection for the animals, and they also provide oxygen, as you know. So I think cutting down trees would have, an impact on not only us, but on all the animals. So I just wanted to mention the main thing for me is the security for my kids and not knowing who's walking behind there. The other thing is having a trail, you're gonna also have obviously some kind of lighting, and that could potentially be coming into our house, so we wouldn't even have like darkness when we wanted it. So those are just some things I wanted to bring up. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else in the center portion? If not, I'll move over to the left. I'll take you, whichever one wants to go first.
Good evening. My name is Anna Korkiewicz. I'm the resident of Sterling Heights. As the 30-year real estate broker, I remember when these subdivisions were developed. Somebody has already mentioned that he paid $30,000 more for the lot than other people. Well, there are lots that were $70,000 and $80,000 more expensive when it was developed. As I remember, and I paid considerably more for the house than other houses without private lots. These are the houses that increase the value of the subdivision. They sell the highest. If these homes, the values will go down, the whole subdivision will be less expensive. So this is my concern. And also, my situation. Those homes were built with big windows. My husband has just passed away, and I will be living as a single woman with hopefully my daughter. The safety is very important for me because sometimes people cross my lot for the shortcut. How am I going to defend myself? It is dangerous. When we moved in, we cleared the lot because the builders left the whole mess in the woods. We saw dead animals. We rented the whole garbage bin, the big one, and we cleared ourselves. There was, as somebody mentioned here already, there was vodka, there was a tent, there was a dirty mattress. We cleared it. And now I'm afraid that once we have the nature trail behind it, I will be exposed. I cannot do anything. I don't have curtains because the windows are huge. I will feel really, really in danger. I love watching animals through the window in winter and in summer. I would really appreciate if this, I don't see any benefits of this trail, but negative, just negative negative side of this project. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much, ma'am. Take your next, miss.
Good evening, Mayor Taylor, Council Kashubski, Mr. Vanderpool, and members of council. I'm Alexandra Urban. I'm also a resident of Sterling Heights. And I'd like to address some of these concerns, reiterate some of them related to this ironic proposal to build a nature trail while removing a lot of the natural aspects of this area. One of the concerns I have is that there are a number of signs that are posted there. When one of the trees almost fell on my parents' property, they tried to have it removed, and they were told repeatedly by the city that that tree cannot be removed because it's in a wetlands. And now you want to build a trail right through that. So that's a concern. Additionally, I'm not really sure, maybe you can clarify for the residents what the connection of Sterling Heights to Beaumont Hospital in the city of Troy, why that would be in any way necessary. Additionally, as a lot of people have mentioned to you, these lots were lots that came at a premium. Since this is a governmental entity that's going to be building this trail, I think that the city at this point is potentially stepping into some territory of eminent domain, because we would want to be compensated for the premium that we paid, that the city is now going to be taking for their own benefit. Additionally, we have concerns about the surreptitious nature of these entire proceedings without the citizens being given proper notice of this. We think that probably they were entitled to both substantive and procedural due process with having been properly noticed and the opportunity to be heard. I think that one hearing prior to the building of this trail, which is, I guess, scheduled to start within the next week or two, only at the notice of Miss Early, who's through the course of her campaigning happened to leave a flyer, is probably insufficient notice to people who may have their property rights affected in this way. Additionally, like many residents, I too enjoy watching the animals. Right now I have a very scenic backyard view where it's, Bambi, Thumper, some birds, and now I have to think about Mr. Vanderpool jogging through with his dog. And for a lot of residents, when you don't have the opportunity to put curtains because of the type of construction, that our homes have. It's just not feasible, and especially when it wasn't something that was anticipated in this type of neighborhood. So like I said, for most people, it's the potential for the trash, the safety concerns of the residents, and I think for both the residents and for the city, some of the concerns that should be really at the forefront are the decreased property values and, to be quite frank, the potential for litigation in this matter should this trail proceed. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Anyone else? Yes, sir, in the back.
Okay, my name is Ron Twigg, live on Chesapeake. We've been in Sterling Heights since 1976. We used to live by 16 in DeQuinder, so we decided to move north to 19 in DeQuinder because it's a lot prettier there. The nature center was there, and it is designated a nature center. Now, it's beautiful. We have woods. We have a nice pond. I seen this plan about over 2 years ago. At that time, I thought it was a good idea because we had no way to get to DeQuinder or ride to Beaumont Hospital if we wanted to, whatever. However, things have changed. Once they paved DeQuinder, now we have sidewalks. And it follows the same line as that nature trail would follow. We didn't have sidewalks on 19 Mile between Pondview and DeQuinder. Now we do. So there's no need that I see for that bike trail. Before, again, I did like it. I don't now, especially when they said they're going to destroy the woods. We do have a lot of animals. We have, like they said, turkeys, deer, ducks, geese, whatever you want. And we want to maintain that. Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. Anyone else on the left side over here? Yes, sir.
My name is James Banishak, and I live on Burning Bush. Now, I've been in Sterling Heights just under 50 years. I've had 2 home invasions. The last one was on Burning Bush. The police indicated that they made their escape through the woods. He says it's very easy for them to home invade a home and get into the woods and get away free. With a path that's only going to make it a lot faster. That's it.
All right, thank you, sir. Anyone else on my left? If not, anyone on my right? Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Maria Myers. I am a resident of Sterling Heights. My son and I came for, obviously, a Boy Scout merit badge we're working on. But while we were here, we were also discussing issues that he's had and something that he might want to bring up. He's recently had to start walking home from Carlton Middle School, down 15 across Dodge Park. That intersection is hell. There's no other way to say it. He'd push the button, he'd wait. Cars don't care. People don't care. We have signs at this end of Dodge Park, penalty, pedestrians have the right of way, but at 15 Dodge Park, he would sit there for 10, 15, 20 minutes just to get across the street, and I was concerned about his safety. I mean, there's been people hit there before, there's accidents there all the time, but that intersection, there's definitely something that needs to be done. I am grateful he doesn't have to walk through there anymore, because that's a concern. But as he said, we'll let somebody else worry about it. And I said, well, no, we're here now. This is the council we need to present it to. We might as well tell them, so that way someone who has to walk home next year might not have the same problems. So that's just a concern we had, and we were discussing, and it was nerve-wracking, to be honest, worrying about him trying to get across those 2 streets, both 15 and through Dodge Park. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Anyone else on my right side? Yes, sir.
You know, guys, thank you, Mr. Mayor and the council. I'm actually a member, a resident of Dearborn. I moved in with my parents, and they live on 43514 Pondview to take care of them. So I'm a temporary member of Sterling Heights, but, you know, democracy is the best and worst form of government. And it's a real privilege to be able to come up to a microphone. You know, I'm the son of 2 immigrants. This is impossible from where my parents came from. You'd probably get executed if you came up to the microphone and expressed yourself. But the fact is, the fact that you've got a full room of people means that people, this is a hot button subject. People really care. I think it's the height of arrogance that we never knew about this till, and I thank Ms. Early, thank you very much for letting us know. I would have not known about this. I'm representing my mom and dad here, who's 96 and 88, okay? But all I want to say is safety, security, quality of life. And something to consider when you plan a project like that without talking to the people. It's a full room for a reason, is it's always easy to gore someone else's ox. Think about that. Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. Take you next, and then you next after that.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. My name is Walter Shabalka, and I'm a resident of Sterling Heights for a long time. In fact, it's my 3rd house in Sterling Heights. So as my family has grown, I've moved to bigger houses. And I am a resident on Farmdale, which my backyard is part of the floodplain where the pathway is proposed. And I love a walk through the woods like anybody else, and I love what you guys have done with Dodge Park and the pathway there. But I think the reason everybody's here too is just because we're all blindsided by this project. And maybe we should have paid attention to more of what was going on in the city to find out about this beforehand. But I think if there was a better way that we would have been told about it, and we could have had voiced our opinion prior to this stage, because I imagine it's too late now that everything is probably in the works. But I'd like you to reconsider this project, given the fact that we've got so many people here, you know, wanting to oppose this. My biggest concern is I've walked the trail, I've walked through the floodplain, and I'm just surprised at how many trees are marked to be cut down. That's my biggest concern. It's like, who made that decision to walk through there and take so much of the mature trees that add to the beauty of the park? But please do reconsider this project given the circumstances. Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir.
Good evening, Patrick Granowitz. I'm a resident of Sterling Heights. My property does back up to this preserve area where you're putting the path. And I just wanted to reiterate everything else that everybody said, but I wanted to show you a photo, if I could, of the area that you consider. If you look, this happens a couple times a year where it turns into a lake back there. And if you're going to have a path there, it's going to need constant maintenance. So I don't know if you've considered that it's going to be an added expense to maintain that path, because it's going to wash away a couple times a year. That's it.
All right, thank you, sir. Anyone else on my right side? Mr. Marshall owns.
Good evening. My name's Harry Marshallones. Appreciate you sitting here listening to me. Most of you in the council and mayor know me, but the people behind me, please understand, I spent 4 years in the Marine Corps. I spent 6 years in the Special Forces Army Airborne, and I spent 4 years in the Naval Air Reserve. And I'm one of those people today that say, I love my country, but I'm afraid as hell about my politicians. I love Sterling Heights. It's a great city. And you folks have made it a great city. but sometimes you just scare the bejeebers out of me when I hear that you're trying to put something through, something that was almost snuck through. I didn't hear anything about it. I don't know who did. There's just too much that some of you are trying to do. You have to understand, we're adults, we're people. We're responsible for all our actions. We're not kids. You don't have to treat us like children. Just because you think something is nice or would be cute to have, don't go out and buy it or start putting it through and all that other stuff. If you want to do something really constructive, you want to serve the people that vote for you, put an ad in the paper and say, these are the things that we are thinking of. Show us what you're interested in the order of importance. But we fought like hell not to get that bicycle trail down the Sterling Heights drain. We put in hundreds and hundreds of hours. A lot of people fought that. And you folks worked with us, and it went down. These people have the same problem. They have property, they vote for you, they don't want it. Why the hell is it coming? Forget about it. If just because it's nice in your eyes doesn't mean squat to us. We really don't care. Find out what we want and try to get that. We could get 1,000 people down here that said, we'd like some roads. And you folks managed to fix up a bunch of them for us, and we appreciate that. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Harry. Yeah, Mr. Smith. I'll let you two fight it out for who wants to go first.
I already won. Julio Russo. What I don't understand about this whole thing is how did this get out, talked about under the citizens portion of this? That part I don't understand. So you guys are coming up with ideas, and then you're just doing it, and then as they find out about it, then they come in here and complain about it. I'm not understanding that, Mark. It's not fair for people to have to do that here. You guys are elected officials here, and you're supposed to present ideas. Your jobs are to present things if you want to improve the city and you want to present it to us, and we can give you our blessings on it. But you can't just have this under the citizens part of this thing where we're talking about it for an hour and it's not on the agenda. Why didn't you guys put this on the agenda? Is beyond my comprehension. The other thing is, you're worried about this here. Why don't you, instead of doing it through the woods? Now, I grew up in those woods. I know everything about it. I know more about those woods than anybody in Sterling Heights, because I grew up in there, all right? We biked through there. We four-wheeled with our, motorcycles. There used to be a hill there that we used to go up the hill every Sunday. It was a known thing in that area. Why don't you do like they've done on 16 Mile Road? They made a big, beautiful path going all the way to Metro Beach. It's all covered with trees. It's from here to that wall away from the highway. You can do that on Dobry. You have plenty of beautiful area in Dobry that you can do a nice cart path and just have it right there and go around where it's longer and without going through wetlands. You don't know all the obstacles inside that woods. Now, I don't know who you had going over there marking trees, But obviously, you guys don't care about trees because you're letting the amusement park get overrun by some apartment buildings that you're building in that hole. I've actually put my boat in right there off of Van Dyke. But yet Chris said a few weeks ago, said that that's never flooded. That's never flooded. Well, I'm going to tell you something. I've been in Sterling Heights 63 years. That's flooded twice. And twice I've put my boat right there and canoed into the Clinton River. The only reason why that doesn't get full of water now is because the Clinton River keeps clean now. Everybody clears out all the debris out of the Clinton River. But if the Clinton River gets full of trees and all the different things that it used to do where nobody cleaned it, you would have that flooded again. I mean, that's the thing. The other thing I want to talk about is the reason why I came here tonight is some of the issues of Merrill Road. Now, you're having to do one direction on Merrill Road, but yet you're going to have semis going down our side streets, okay? And I think that it should be monitored that these semis are not going to be able to turn down our side streets to get out of there because you're going to have it one direction. There's 2 signs on 2 of the streets that you can't make a right-hand turn. There's no way with one direction on Merrill that you can allow that right now until after you're completed with the project.
Okay,
Okay.
we're going to have to leave it at that. Thank you, Mr. Russo, I appreciate it. Mr. Jednick?
Good evening, Council. Joe Judnick. Jasmine Early is obviously a champion for the people in Sterling Heights, from what I've heard. Anyhow, I'm here tonight to talk about code enforcement and the Ordinance Board of Appeals. This is several months ago. Mr. Taylor and Mr. Radke, very seldom do I agree with you two gentlemen, but they had a meeting about the sign ordinance, and I agreed with the two of you 100% about commercial properties and having the owners come down here and get signed paperwork and all of that nonsense. So now we're going to have code enforcement officials driving around in October, November with a checklist of all the commercial properties. They're going to be driving over there. Oh, somebody called on a sign. They got to go check on the sign. They got to go to City Hall. They got to call that person up, whoever. We have 12 part-timers. We did not need them to be chasing around a couple of signs. 40 square feet. We already had the ordinance in place, 40 square feet per property. Mrs. Schmidt said she wouldn't want to look at that blight. You have no idea what blight was. If you want to know what blight is, come to one of the Ordinance Board of Appeals meetings, and that's what I want to talk about. I was at the last meeting. The place was packed. We don't have enough officers to handle the complaints that are coming in, and the people that show up at the meetings, they've received notices as far back as a year ago, and they've never done a thing with their violation. Now they have to appear before the Ordinance Board of Appeals, and these 5 board members are doing backflips, fighting over each other to see who can give them more time to take care of this abate their nuisance on their property. I'll give you one example. There was a lady that was there about landscape issues. Looked to me like the board was going to give her another couple of weeks. One of the board members spoke up and said, well, this isn't your first time here. You were here in 2017. You were here in 2015. You were here in 2013, 9, 8, 7, and 3 for violations on your property. They still didn't say anything. Then there were 2 gentlemen that got up, live on both sides of this lady, and they spoke out that she doesn't take care of her property. Then they abated the nuisance immediately. But they were going to give, after 1 year, they were going to give her another couple of weeks. There was another situation. A man had 4 vehicles on his property, no licenses. He had junk everywhere. This is the worst property that I've ever seen on pictures. The city asked for an immediate abatement. They were going to give this gentleman 6 weeks, and this had been going on for a year. So I came up and spoke out against the property. He got so hostile with the board that they had to call the police down there to escort him out because he wasn't going to agree with their thing. So I would like the administration, if there's a way that you can go and talk to, and these are residents that are on that board, so I understand that. But when it comes before the Ordinance Board of Appeals, they've exhausted all their time, in my opinion. To give somebody another, a year, after 1 year. There was a lady, somebody ran through her fence. She lived on a major street. So for 1 year, the wood was stacked up in her backyard, and they took pictures of it, the official. So now she wants 2 weeks after 1 year. This car ran through her fence a year ago. So the wood stood in her yard. It was stacked in her yard for a year. So neighbors on both sides had to look at that for a year, and then they want another 2 weeks. There were two guys. There were Mr. Cooper and Mr. Petroni. Man, when that came before that Ordinance Board of Appeals, brother, they abated the nuisance immediately. These board members, they don't have a backbone anymore. So I'd like to see if the city can do something about it. It's only going to get worse. The summer's progressing now. I've seen overgrown grass. I've seen grass growing in the cuts and everything. Our officers are already spread too thin. Now, if you give somebody another 30 days, that officer's got to go back and re-inspect once, re-inspect again, and we don't have the resources to do that. So if there's anything that you can do, when it comes before Ordinance Board of Appeals, they got the letter in their hand, they should abate that nuisance immediately unless there's a real extenuating circumstance. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Jednick. Mr. Smith?
Good evening, my fellow residents of Sterling Heights. Sorry I didn't get all dressed up for this meeting. I wasn't planning on attending, but I saw an issue I heard nothing about until tonight. Essentially, the third round of invasion of privacy by City Council converting our residential suburb into an extension of Disney World. I was a victim of this myself. Nobody cared because there's only a few people on Utica Road. And then a greater number of people along the relief train were victimized, and they were able to muscle up and defend this. And here's the third onslaught of this. Well, I've been in Sterling Heights for 42 years. About 8 to 10 years ago, I bought property adjoining the Clinton River. We had a nice 4-foot nature trail serviced by a 4-foot pedestrian bridge that had been perfectly adequate since the beginning of time. But now we got the Big Mark Bridge, a 14-foot bridge, which triggered an enlargement of the 4-foot nature trail to a 14-foot superhighway that now you can get a tractor trailer, a full-size fire truck, or police car. You drive through through Dodge Park in any vehicle you want. So now these people here think that along the Sterling Relief Drain or this new proposed drain, you're getting a little pedestrian traffic. Well, you'll be like me and my wife. Around 3:30, 4 in the morning, you'll hear unmuffled ninja bikes racing through there at 100 miles an hour. And there's no need to call the police because by the time they react, they'll be 10 miles away. But you know, within a half hour of the time the bars close, this trail is going to be a racetrack. You're going to be subject to the same thing I am. There's probably only about 20 people in my boat, so we don't have as much firepower as you do. But I feel for you. Those that lived on the relief drain had enough firepower to stop this, and I hope you people do too. It's ironic that these three women, this one here, this one here, and this one here, you three women, you based your career on yelping about 8 or 10 concerts at Freedom Hill half a mile away that annoyed you for 2 hours a night, 6 or 8 times a year. But you're going to subject these people all year round to this harassment. You complained about a little music a couple times a month, half a mile away. You're going to put this 50 or 100 feet out people's backyard and think nothing of it because anything for business, anything for business. Well, if you got all this money to spend, you want bike trails, 17 mile, 18 mile, 19 mile. Let's get some sidewalks on there so people can get from one side of Sterling Heights to the other. Put a trail in where people really need it. In front of the DPW in the retention pond. Sterling Heights property that has no sidewalks. You got people walking in the gravel, riding their bikes in the gravel, dodging the traffic every day, trying to get from Van Dyke to Mound, Mound to Van Dyke, from one side of the city to the other on city property. And you don't have a sidewalk, but you're going to put a useless recreational trail in somebody's backyard. What kind of a city government is this?
All right. Thank you. Is there anyone I missed that would like to speak? If not, I'll close that portion, go on to reports. Trying to be the last one. Give buzzer beater here.
Good evening, council members. My name is Steve Sittu. I've been a resident of Sterling Heights for 18 years. I moved to Forest View 2 years ago. So I'm just gonna summarize the concerns of my neighbors. It's safety, wildlife, privacy. Also, this was not communicated to us. I spoke to the city manager, Mr. Vanderpool, before the meeting, and he said that was on the news 2 years ago. I did contact the Home Association today, and they claim that they're not aware of this project. So with all these concerns, we need the city council to reconsider this project and hopefully cancel it. Thank you.
Okay, without anyone else at the last second, I will close that portion and go on to reports from city administration. Mr. Vanderpool, any reports tonight?
Mayor, no further reports from me, but if council would like me to, I can respond to some of the issues, but it's up to city council how you'd like me to respond.
Well, I guess without objection, if you would be prepared, or if you are prepared, could you kind of respond to a couple things, particularly the history of this project, how it got to where we are today, update on how it ended up on last week's, or the council agenda from 2 weeks ago, and if you have any recollection of how many times it's been discussed publicly and what the messaging was since early 2016 regarding this trail.
Sure, Mayor. Let me just start. Well, let me premise my comments by saying city administration would be happy to hold an additional informational meeting with the residents to go over in fine detail, where the project's at, the actual scope of the project. We'd be happy to meet on site individually with property owners to view your individual concerns as well, to look at additional screening, things of that sort, which we typically would do for a project of this sort. So by way of history, this particular component is part of our overall Recreating Recreation Plan that was approved by the voters in November 2016. So about 2.5 years ago, this project was approved by the voters. Now, this particular scope was part of the overall project, along with many, many other components, including upgrading 24 neighborhood parks, which in those parks we also extended and improved many bike hike trails. In fact, all of our parks, with the exception of approximately 4 of them, now have bike hike trails that go through them and abut residential properties as well. But the Recreating Recreation project, as many know, was massive in scope, and it included not only this bike hike extension of our many miles of bike hike trail throughout the city. It included, as I mentioned, upgrading the 24 neighborhood parks. It included upgrading Dodge Park. It included building a new community center, a skate park, a dog park. Dog park's just beginning. New soccer field, new basketball courts, new volleyball courts. I mentioned bike hike trail extensions And there are many other components to the Recreating Recreation project. This was publicized widely throughout the community. We had numerous town hall meetings talking about the various components of the Recreating Recreation project. Many residents attended the town hall meetings. In fact, we received comments on many components of the project that we did end up revising. For example, originally the dog park was scheduled for Magnolia Park, but when we held our town hall meeting, some residents expressed concern about that, and the dog park was relocated to an area over by Delia Park. So we've made various revisions and adjustments to the overall project as we went along. And then as the project, it was built out, the project was bid and approved by City Council as well as part of the public City Council meetings. I might also mention on this particular project at our strategic planning session this past year, I think it was late January, early February, we provided a significant update on this particular component of the project as well. In addition, as some may know, the city approved a couple of years ago its first ever non-motorized transportation plan, wherein we're filling in as many sidewalk gaps as possible throughout the city, including constructing new sidewalk in certain areas, connecting various nodes. And that includes a new sidewalk on 18 Mile Road as well, which a project we're working on at this very moment, which includes installing the sidewalk in front of the DPW building. But as part of the non-motorized transportation plan, bike hike extensions were very much a part of that plan. And the non-motorized plan was widely publicized. We had public hearings on the non-motorized plan. And this particular component, this particular bike hike extension was noted clearly in the non-motorized plan as well. So there have been numerous times throughout the past few years where this particular bike hike trail extension was noted. And I want to respond to some of the particular concerns about safety and so on. I can certainly understand and appreciate and respect the concerns about public safety. The reality is we have an extensive network of bike hike trail in the city of Sterling Heights, and we have not had public safety concerns. In fact, to the contrary, many of these areas are very safe. We have police officers on bike patrol that have opened up some of these areas to security patrols that in the past it wasn't possible. We simply do not have safety concerns on our vast bike hike trail network in the city of Sterling Heights. In addition, with respect to property values, I know there is a concern that there will be a decline in property values. However, that has not been the experience in nationwide and specifically in Sterling Heights. If you look at properties that are adjacent to parks and our bike hike trail system, they're some of the most expensive properties in the city. Certainly there's an increased value along public amenities like parks and bike hike trails compared to properties that are further inland. There's many studies that validate this, but you can drive around our city, you can look at our assessing records, and this is the case. In fact, if you look at current publications of properties for sale, you'll see that realtors specifically note that properties are close to the Dodge Park trail system or other park amenities. So the concern about property value declines and safety is just not what we're experiencing in Sterling Heights with our bike hike trail systems. In this particular case, as some have noted, the particular area is not part of the wetlands. It is accessible in some cases, as in many cases, as some of the residents have said, they found debris and mattresses and other things of the sort along the path, along the current Plumbrook drain. This type of amenity certainly would minimize that opportunity. We don't have significant debris or mattresses or situations like that along our current bike hike trail system. When we do have it, it is quickly noticed and rectified within a matter of hours rather than days. There is no tree clear cutting that's going to be going on. There will be trees that will have to be removed, no question about it. But there'll also be many new trees planted throughout the project. There was a question about why would the trail system dump into a parking lot? Why would we connect to Troy Beaumont Hospital? And there's a couple of important reasons for that. First, the city of Sterling Heights has probably one of the most beautiful nature preserve areas of any city around. The problem is no one can enjoy it. There's no way to really get to it. So the second phase of this bike hike trail system would be a loop around the nature preserve with various lookout points and factoids about wildlife and the natural habitation in the preserve and so on. Not going in the preserve, but certainly with lookout points so that residents can enjoy this incredible preserve that we have in our city. We want to partner with Troy Beaumont for obvious reasons for health and encouraging and promoting an active lifestyle in the city, and our bike hike trail system certainly does that. Let me just quickly scan this. I'd be happy to follow up on any other concerns that the city council may have, Mayor, at this point. Thank you.
Just real briefly, one resident brought up the concern about lighting on the trail. Can you address that?
Thank you, Mayor. There is no plan to put lighting along the trail. We don't have any of our trails currently lit in the city. That is not a component of this plan.
Okay. Mr. Koszupski, anything for tonight?
Nothing tonight, Mayor.
Okay. Open up to council for reports, new business, anyone? Mrs. Zarko.
Oh, I just have a couple of comments about the things that I heard tonight. And one, we're talking about safe streets. I think Mr. Jefferson brought it up. And there is a sunset clause in there, Mr. Jefferson. So just that you know, I think that was also indicated. I think Mrs. Schmidt went and made sure that we all knew that at the last meeting, that there is a sunset clause. And also the fact that even though I think it's a 2.45 mils, if in the future we don't need all that money, we're not going to assess it. Even though we would have the opportunity, if we don't need it, we're not going to assess it. So that's something for people to keep in mind. The other thing is a signal at 15 and Dodge Park. It is a strange signal. Mm-hmm. I've come up to that intersection, and if you're on 15 and you want to cross Dodge Park going west, there is not a button to push in order to get you across the street. The only button that will take you is across 15 Mile, which takes you across a driveway, which I'm not even sure if it brings you back or not. But I think it needs to be looked at, because the resident that brought it up tonight is definitely right about it being strange, and there is no push button to go west at that intersection. The other concern was Merrill Road and the semis that are there, and I have to agree. I hope that when we redo that road that we're compensating for the fact that it is used probably for semis, and rather than have this road disintegrate and we're replacing it every couple of years, I hope we've adjusted whatever we're doing to make sure that it can accommodate the semis, but also the fact that we don't want them going down residential streets. So if it turns in that it's just a one-way, then that's what it'll have to be on Merrill until all this construction is done. But I have to agree with Mr. Russo that it is a problem. And also I think, yes, Mr. Russo, I think he brought it up. Mm-hmm. So if we can look into that. And The only thing, I listened to residents today, and I heard what you say about paying premiums for those lots. But I have to tell you, the city has no control over that. Even at the time you purchased it, that was between buyer and seller. I can give you an example of when I first got on council, there was an issue that was on Ryan Road, just north of 18, where people paid premiums for golf course lots, only to find out the golf course ended up being sold and homes were built on that golf course. So it happens, but that's between buyer and seller, and the city has nothing to do with that. And I think that's all I have to say.
All right, thank you, Mrs. Zarko. Anyone else, council?
Mayor
Mrs.
Taylor,
Schmidt.
through the chair to Mr. Vanderpool. Mr. Vanderpool, would it be possible off of Merrill to put on the side streets no construction traffic allowed during the construction of Merrill Road? I think that would alleviate some of the concern that Mr. Russo had as well. I would have no problem of no, big trucks through any time, but especially those construction trucks bringing the cement through and taking the old cement out. And I have nothing further tonight. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mrs. Schmidt. Anyone else, council?
Mr. Mayor.
Mrs. Koski.
Through the chair to Mr. Vanderpool. Listening to the residents this evening, you and I had a conversation earlier this evening. As you know, I have not been in favor of that path right from the time that it was first brought to council. I was on council when the Nature Preserve was created. We bought property up in that section. We had property donated to us. That Nature Preserve was supposed to stay pristine. It was going to be, no one goes in there. We had some Boy Scouts that wanted to go in there and clean it up, and we said, no, absolutely not. No one's going in there. We're going to keep that kind of special. So I guess I was a little prejudiced when the path was suggested. I think that we should sit down with the residents that came this evening and talk to them and explain to them exactly what is scheduled to take place. If they still object to it, I believe we have one more meeting where I could rescind my vote and bring this back to the table again. Mr. Vanderpool, comments, please?
Mr. Vanderpool. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, and we understand. We all understand your position, and we've listened, and I can tell you, the louder you applaud and the longer you applaud isn't going to change anybody's votes. We understand your passion about this, and we're going to have a discussion, but let's try to minimize disruptions. Thank you. Mr. Vanderpool.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilwoman Koski, couple thoughts come to mind. First, we certainly understood and your concern about interfering with the nature preserve was certainly taken into consideration. There are no plans to actually go into the forest preserve or the nature preserve whatsoever. The plan is simply to go around it as part of an amenity, an attraction, if you will. There's no plan to disrupt it whatsoever. And that would be a second phase down the road. That would not be part of this phase. This phase simply goes to Troy Beaumont. But the plan is to interconnect and fully integrate all these nodes and sidewalks and trail systems long term. That's what our non-motorized transportation plan is all about. In response to your second comment, again, we would be happy to meet and share the more detailed plans with the residents, and we'll be, in fact, I circulated early on a sign-up sheet to get all the names and addresses, emails, and phone numbers. So we'll be happy to have that meeting and go over the plan in great detail. And as I mentioned, we'd be happy to fine-tune, make some adjustments if necessary here and there based on some of the concerns mentioned and maybe some additional concerns that may come about. You are correct, finally, in stating that City Council would have the prerogative to reconsider this. You would have 2 meetings to do that. Of course, it would require a majority of the City Council. The project is under contract and proceeding, but you would have the chance to reconsider that according to your rules and procedures. So you're correct in that respect.
Again, Mr. Vanderpool, what can we do to stop it right now until you have had a conversation with the residents? Do I have to move to reconsider my vote to prevent this from moving forward, to postpone it at this point?
Mr. Vanderpool.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilman Koski, we have the latitude in the contract, and the city attorney can elaborate. Clearly, we can delay the start until we get additional feedback from the community involved and make adjustments, as I said. City Council would not have to take action on that this evening. We have the latitude administratively to determine the start date of the project. And certainly the city attorney could comment if I've misstated anything or if he'd like to add to it.
Mr. Koszybski.
Thank you, Mayor. The contract does provide the same latitude that Mr. Vanderpool has stated. Administratively, we can delay the contract start time for a little while. There are some provisions that say how long that can be done, but for the short run, you could do that.
Well, that's what I'm requesting, is that no action be taken with this bid that we awarded at the June 4th meeting. I believe it was to, can't remember their name now. Oh, LaSalle Group. I would like to put them on notice that they are to take no action until Mr. Vanderpool has had the opportunity to meet with the residents and get back with council that the residents are satisfied with the trail as proposed, or that we should not follow through with the project. That's what I ask.
Okay.
At the next meeting.
Okay.
Because I believe that's the last date to rescind my vote.
Well, just to be clear, are you asking for any action to be taken tonight?
The action that I asked to be taken tonight is that administration will put the LaSalle Group on notice that they are not to take any steps to proceed with the installation of the path. And that Mr. Vanderpool meet with the residents within the next 2 weeks and report back to council at the next meeting.
Do we need to vote on that, Mr. Koszybski?
It would take consensus of council essentially to give that direction to the city manager. So if there's objections, then you would need a vote.
So it sounds to me like what you're saying is that you would want Mr. Vanderpool to, or legal counsel to notify the successful bidder.
Correct.
From the last council meeting to maintain status quo, do nothing for 2 weeks, give Mr. Vanderpool the opportunity to meet with residents formally or informally, and then report back to the city council at the July 2nd meeting?
Correct.
Okay. Is there anyone that would object to that? Okay. I personally, I don't object to a 2-week delay to tell the contractor to stop doing anything, to try to work something out over the next 2 weeks. Mr. Koszybski, just playing this out, what would be the options at the July 2nd city council meeting?
Well, thank you, Mayor. The project is under contract at this point, so the options at the next council meeting would be to, the council could do a motion for reconsideration on the project itself. on the award, I should say, of the contract. That's really the only action item that could be reversed at this point, because that was what the action was previously. So that would be one option. Again, it's under contract, so we'd have to look at consequences of that action.
And under our council rules or ordinance or charter, we're given 2 meetings to rescind a vote. Can you explain that process?
Sure. Rule 18 is our reconsideration process, and if there's a requested vote or motion by a member who was on the successful side, I believe it was a unanimous vote at the last meeting. So any member of council could make that motion for reconsideration, and they have they have 2 basic meetings to do that, either the same day or 2 successive meetings.
Okay, and then it would be as if that person voted no originally, because I guess I'm struggling here. So we already have a signed contract. We've already had some work progress started. So if we put them on notice that we don't want them to do any more work right now, and then we were to reconsider and change the vote at the July 2nd meeting, would there would be consequences for the breach of the contract? We wouldn't be saved by Rule 18 of our rules of operating procedure. Is that correct?
There would be consequences, and I'd want to take the time over the next 2 weeks to advise councils what those consequences might be.
Okay. All right, that's fair. Is there anyone else? Okay,
She still has the floor.
Mrs. Koski, I was going to say, do you have anything else?
No, that's it.
Okay. Anyone else on council?
Mr. Mayor?
On this, Mr. Radke?
On everything, right? Just reports from.
Yeah, floor is yours.
So I'll start with the 2 that came before and then go into the proposed nature trail. First, without objection, I think we discussed this before, I'd like the city manager to prepare a traffic study for 15 Mile Road from Van Dyke to Dodge Park. I'd already requested it for the intersection just east of Van Dyke where that woman was struck and killed by a car while crossing the street. And I did it because we've now added 2 hotels to that intersection right there, along with the credit union and 2 more shopping centers. And I frequently, because I live right there at 15 Mile and Van Dyke, I frequently see people crossing the street without a light because there's no crosswalk there. And I sent a picture to Mr. Vanderpool of a woman in black crossing the same intersection where the other woman was struck and killed. Clawson does some interesting things. They have traffic islands that you can wait at in the intersection. It's just a crosswalk, but you can go to the intersection and wait in the middle of the road at a protected traffic island and then cross, or some other ideas. But I thought objectively I could have a traffic study because along with that part of Dodge Park, which Mrs. Zarko brought up, which I have noticed too, I think that we should have some safety things done because I'm really afraid of some people getting more struck and killed in that 15 Mile Road area.
Any objection to such a traffic study? Okay, I think you have direction on that. Mr. Radke.
Secondly, I wanted to address Mr. Judnick. I see he's left, but I'll talk to him. He's probably watching at home now. We hired an extra code enforcement officer this year, didn't we, Mr. Vanderpool? To the chair.
Mr. Vanderpool.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, Councilman Radke, we hired an additional code enforcement officer. In fact, we've now over the last 10 years or so doubled the number of code enforcement officers we have.
I know that we've been working very hard to try to address some of the issues with code enforcement. I happened to drive on Merrill Road some time ago, Mr. Russo, and I saw a semi-truck parked on someone's lawn. And that was probably the most offensive thing I've seen in a long time, literally parked on the lawn. So, yeah, so we're definitely trying to address the code enforcement problems, not just in the Merrill Road area, but all across the city. To turn to the nature trail, we might have to reconsider this, but I think it's a net good for the city. I can understand objections. I counted, by my tally, 22 people who came to the microphone and spoke against this. I happened to look up while I was sitting here just the amount of meetings that we've discussed the nature trail. I'm just going to list them off very briefly. Give me 1 second to pull it up. It'll load. So the city council discussed the nature trail on January 24th, 2017, or is in our packet, February 21st, 2017, March 20th, 2017, May 16th, 2017, June 6th, 2017, January 3rd, 2018, July 18th, 2017, August 1st, 2017, April 17th, 2018, May 1st, 2018, July 17th, 2018, and September 21 of 2018. So we've given notice. I understand that you didn't get a letter in the mail, and I want to do more to alleviate some of your concerns. But City Council has been discussing this for some time. It was part of our recreating recreation ordinance. 22 people came to the microphone, 26,420 voted in favor of recreating recreation. That's hard. You know, you don't want to ever change someone's community or someone's neighborhood, but you have to balance the entire community's needs versus several people in the neighborhood. I think this nature trail will be a net good for the city. I know that we've had real estate agents come to us, talk about Dodge Park and the improvements we've done there, and said that it's increased property values between 10 and 15% overnight because people want recreation amenities in their neighborhoods. I remember talking about the proposed bike path that was sadly shot down on the 15.5-mile relief train, which I live right adjacent to. And we talked about crime then, because we were some concerns about crime in areas like this. And the police chief came and gave his word to us that he's never had an incident in the park, really. But we have bike patrols and a ATV vehicle to go into the parks to check these trails. But there was no increase in crime on the trails. There actually was a decrease because of more people transiting the area. That was his word to us. So it's hard. I never like to do things, but we want to improve our city. We want to make it so people can recreate in their neighborhoods, can go out. You know, I find it hard to sit up here and listen to people who, I've lived here for 20 years. So I've lived here for 20 years in Sterling Heights. I find it hard when people come and say, you know, I bought my house and never expected a thing to change about our city. Our city is constantly growing. When I moved here in 1997, we didn't have the population that we have now, or the amenities. I mean, Dodge Park has been transformed. If you come here on a farmer's market night on Thursday and watch the crowds and watch people use the parks, you'll see it. I know it's hard, and I honestly, I feel for the residents who are adjacent to this area. But we want to improve it for everyone. And I think that if you give us a chance to talk with you, have our listening session, you'll see that it's going to benefit everyone. The trail won't be lit. You know, one resident remarked it was ironic that we were adding a nature trail to, you know, picking out a few trees to preserve nature. You know, you won't find a bigger proponent of tree planting on the city council than me. I tried to pass more trees planted earlier this year and it failed. But that's not the point. You know, when we increase opportunities to enjoy nature, we increase the ability of people to go out there and see how much we need to preserve things like the nature preserve, to preserve a little bit of history of Sterling Heights. You know, also, if you go through Dodge Park, you see how hard our parks staff works to keep the parks clean. If we add this nature trail to our system, our park staff is going to work just as hard to keep it clean. And people ask, why does it connect to Beaumont? You know, there was concerns about people parking in your neighborhood, so we put the parking further away so people could park and walk the trail. And there's a complaint about that. It's like you can't satisfy everyone. So I'm very sorry that some people came today, 22 people. But I have to go with the 26,420 people who voted in favor. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you, Mr. Radke. Anyone? Okay.
Mayor Taylor.
Come on, please be respectful. We didn't boo you and we didn't hiss at you when you were speaking, even if we disagreed. So please try to be respectful of the city council that listened to every one of you who wanted to speak. Mrs. Zarowski.
Thank you. I'm only going to speak on the nature trail. And I grew up in a small farming community outside of Lansing called Grand Ledge. In my parents' house, we butted up against a beautiful field and woods and meadow, and we didn't own a thing of it, but we got to use it growing up for 25 years. It is a heartbreak to me when I go back home to see the houses that are now built there. I understand completely how it feels to have where you live, where you grew up, the beauty. I had every animal that could possibly exist half the time in my freaking house because they would sneak in. But it's a wonderful thing to live within that. So I do understand your concerns, and I do encourage every single person and those residents that are not here to please attend the meetings that Mr. Vanderpool is going to have, and that I will be at, as many as I can, because I'm driving from Ann Arbor every day, but for work, not because I live there. But I want you guys to understand that this was not, unfortunately, this is not news. I know it's news to you. You live by a nature preserve. You thought, I'm good. I'm not by a park. I'm not by anything. They're not going to develop this land. So you didn't, I will give you, I see it as you didn't even expect that this meant anything, this would affect you. But it has been on, it was part of the recreating recreation, and it was part of the master plan, and this was spoken about. So I'm so sorry that it's a surprise to you, and that we maybe could have done more to reinforce that this is going to directly affect you. Yes, I see how this is very close to some of your properties. I know Mr. Bodazato, our kids went to St. Lawrence together. So yes, I understand, and we do understand, and that's why we would like you, and we are reconsidering this. It is extremely important, though, that you show and that you listen, though, because we listen to you. Listen and make sure that the renderings, there is going to be plantings between the trail, which is crushed gravel. It's not a paved trail, number one, but it's going to be buffered by bushes and trees and other plantings, so you're not, granted, it's not going to be grown completely up, but you are going to have that opportunity to have those trees and plantings grow. Look at what we have, what they've presented, some of the renderings, and then make your decisions, and we will listen. And that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Okay, anyone else, council?
Mayor Taylor.
Mrs.
I
Zarko?
have a second turn tonight.
Yeah, go ahead.
You know, I have to say, we did the boards and commissions appointments tonight and nominations, and I've been approached by residents who can't find the descriptions of the boards and commissions on our website. They can find the application, but when they're deciding which board or commission they would want to serve on, they can't find the description as to what the board is about, how many times it meets. So if we could put that in a more prominent and easier place to find, it might bring out people that want to serve, easier for them to find it and apply. So if we could look into that, I'd really appreciate it.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I have one more question.
Mr. Radke, briefly.
Through the chair to Mrs. Varney, this here in the audience. I guess, what would happen to the funds that we've allocated for this proposal if we canceled it? As it was part of recreating recreation, it's in a separate segregated fund. Would the funds have to be returned to the residents, or would it be, we could use them for another purpose, or?
Well, it's definitely part of the recreating recreation plan, so the funds are from the millage. At this point, they would just go back into the fund to be used for other purposes of the plan.
Okay. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Well, a couple questions first. Mr. Koszubski, if you can answer, there were some comments brought up regarding the notice requirements, and I'm not sure if Mr. Vanderpool touched on that. I was taking notes and looking through my notes. But regarding the notice for this was, Mr. Russo, I don't know if you knew, this was voted on at the last city council meeting. So it was an agenda item at the last city council meeting. It was voted on. What are the notice requirements for an item like this? Mr. Koszubski.
So, thank you, Mayor. I guess the easiest way to put it is the notice requirements for the action that was taken at the last council meeting were satisfied by our council rules. If you're asking about the use of city property to put a pathway in, there would be no specific notice requirement to be done under the MZA because there's no zoning issue involved here. So generally speaking, the city is putting a pathway on their own property.
Is any of this property not owned by the city? Does the city have to acquire any of this property in order to connect the path?
My understanding is that it's 100% city-owned property.
Mr. Vanderpool, is that the case?
Mayor, that's the case.
Okay, and with it being city-owned property, what are the rights or obligations of the city regarding use by the public? What are the public's rights regarding, and I don't know if you want to take this, Mr. Koszubski, if you know, but here's where I'm going with this. And we had this issue come up with the Sterling Relief Drain, as Mr. Marshall-Owens and Ms. Surley are quite familiar with. The Sterling Relief Drain, which was discussed today, a bike hike trail was proposed there, and then it kind of went away. But a lot of the residents who lived along that property, even though their property ended at the fence line or at their property line, they used that property. One resident came up and was showing a video of his family feeding deer, and I don't know if that was technically on his property, but the impression I got was that it was actually on city-owned property. And so one of the concerns I have is that, of course, whenever you buy your house and you have some nature backing up to it, when you've got trees, when you've got a forest, when you've got pristine area, even if you don't own it, you want it to look like that for as long as you live in that house. So it sounds to me like some, maybe not all, but some of the residents and some of the concerns was that property is going to change in its nature. What are the public's rights to that property right now? Like, if I wanted to walk along this drain from Delia Park, even though there's not a crushed limestone path there, am I permitted to? What are the rules and regulations regarding that?
Mayor, I'd be happy to take a stab at it first, and the city attorney can fill in the blanks. But the reality is that people use this right-of-way right now. They walk down it, they hike down it. There isn't really anything stopping them from doing so, but what they can't do is litter and you know, disturb the natural habitation and so on. So that happens in our public ways all over the city. For example, in Dodge Park, there are a number of informal trailways that individuals have made that kind of branch off the main path, if you will. There's a BMX trail, for example, and the city has not stopped that unless it really intrudes and interferes with the residents. Now, Dodge Park is not analogous to this particular situation, but the reality is, and I've confirmed that residents are using that area right now. They walk down it, they hike down it, and it happens rather frequently. So what we're really doing in this particular case is making it a little more inviting for hikers and bikers and strollers and walkers and so on, like our normal trail system is used, but also giving us the ability to monitor and patrol it and control for litter and any other material. It's very hard to do that right now, incredibly hard for us to get down that particular right-of-way.
And there's a number of residents were concerned with what would happen after dark here and the access to the backyards after dark. Given the number of bike hike trails that we already do have in the city, are you aware of any issues with those being used late at night and any crime being committed along those late at night? Do you have any information relating to, I know you kind of discussed that, but any information relating to crime after dark or usage of the trails after dark? I know our police officers patrol the trails. We have bike officers who I saw the last time I was up at the splash pad with my kids.
Mayor, that's a very valid concern. The reality is most of our parks by ordinance close at dusk, so we really don't encourage use of the parks during the nighttime hours. If there's disturbances, it's rather easy for us to patrol and go out and check those given areas, but we do not encourage use of the parks and trail system after daylight hours, and in fact we prohibit use of parks in many cases after daylight hours. Now that's obviously we can't enforce every single park and every single violation of that, but we have not. In fact, we had this discussion with the police chief today in looking at past data from parks and our trail systems. We do not have any empirical evidence that shows there's any concerning trends whatsoever on our bike hike trail systems in the city and generally in our parks. If you think about our parks, we have literally thousands of homes that abut parks, that back up to parks. that are used by thousands of people, especially on the weekends. If you think of our vast network of parks, 24 neighborhood parks across the city, they're literally around the parks, all sorts of homes that don't have fences. You could literally walk into the backyard if you wanted to. And on any given weekend or daytime or even evening hours, there's kids playing catch, playing soccer, running, flying kites and so on. And we don't have reports of people trespassing into backyards or B&Es into homes in those areas. And if you, again, just picture the vastness of the city and all the parks. So we just simply don't have the empirical evidence validating their safety concerns.
And additionally, we have something like 24 neighborhood parks. We also have a couple dozen, I would say, elementary schools through Warren Consolidated and through Utica Community Schools. I know when I lived at 15 Mile in Dodge Park, and we would walk to Willow Woods Elementary there, and that was the nearest park, even though it wasn't a city-owned park. Had a playground in park area, and there had to be dozens of homes that directly abut the large yard and parking lot there. And certainly, I don't, in my 10 years on council, I don't recall any issues relating to B&Es or anything like that with regard to the schools and the parks that abut the houses there. The park that we walk to now is Washington Square Park, and there's really two park areas. There was a front playground and a back playground, and the back playground was removed as part of recreating recreation, but there's a trail that goes all around there. It connects with the subdivision and connects back, and there are houses there that the trail backs right up to their house, and there's no fence there. I actually grew up in a house that had a trail right through the backyard, and we lived in a subdivision when I was in high school and college and even younger, and we had a trail that went through the entire neighborhood, and we had a neighborhood that didn't permit fences. And so I certainly appreciate, now my parents bought that house knowing what they got. And so I guess the difference between these examples and what you guys are faced with is that you bought expecting something else. And I'll get to that in a minute. But the reality was we had a decent sized yard and we had a few trees. We certainly didn't have protection from the trails in terms of screening or anything like that. And every day in the summer we'd be out in the backyard. And when I was in high school, I had a brother who was 14 years younger than me. He'd be out there playing with his friends in the neighborhood every day. There was never any concern that people would come, that it's hard for you guys right now. I understand that. And you're sensitive to the safety aspect of it. But the reality is, if somebody was going to break into your house, they'd be much more likely to break through the front where they have their vehicle and they can make a getaway. And to the resident who said there was breaking and enterings into my house and then they escaped to the backyard, that's not happening where there's a well-maintained trail and where there's the potential for police patrols and people using it. So it's counterintuitive. I understand that. And it's difficult to understand, and it's difficult to wrap your head around that I bought this property with certain expectations and now they're going to change. But, I've been on here for 10 years. Some of my colleagues have been on for much longer. The most difficult issues are the ones where something in your backyard is changing. And we had it just a couple of weeks ago over at 15 Mile in Ryan. And we have it a few times every year. And when that subdivision was built at 19 Mile and Ryan and originally built, I'm sure there were neighbors that had farmland that said, I don't want a subdivision of a couple hundred houses being built across from me. This is not what I expected. I expected farmland. So all of us, no matter where we live, it used to be pristine. There used to be trees and nature and animals. There used to be no neighbors. And things change and development happens and it occurs. And as Mr. Radke said, This is something that was, in my opinion, really a centerpiece of the Recreating Recreation proposal. To me, I thought there were three big components. The community center that's being built across the street here, the improvements to Dodge Park, and the nature trail. Because if you are someone who uses the nature trail, you know, there are hundreds and hundreds of people who use it every week. We had a ribbon cutting before the last council meeting. We probably had, what, 40 runners that came out to dedicate the new running trail around Dodge Park. So these people will, the people who voted on this proposal, they had certain expectations too. So this is a difficult issue. Don't get me wrong. We hear you, we understand your concerns, and we want to address them in the best way possible. But there is not going to be a solution here where everybody ends up happy. It's just not possible. So my message is work with the city. If you live directly, if your property abuts directly to where this trail is going to be, work with us to try to figure out a way to minimize what disruption you think will be there. But in terms of your concern about public safety, about crime, about privacy, I can tell you we'll work through the privacy ones, and I hate to tell somebody you're just wrong, because that's not any way to find common ground. But what I will tell you is that there is a lot of empirical evidence out there, a lot, about what trails do to property values and what they do in terms of crime statistics. And so I'm not asking you to take my word for it. I'm asking you to just have an open mind about it, do whatever independent research you can do to find out, and we will work with you to make sure that it's as minimally disruptive as possible if it ends up being built. But if it were, if for whatever reason the project was eliminated, there would be consequences to that too. So, so just try to be calm and try to be patient and understand that this is a willing council and a willing administration. We will work with you to make sure that this is as minimally disruptive as possible. So that's all I have. I would, in closing, I do want to make one comment about something unrelated. I am a member of the United States Conference of Mayors, and the United States Conference of Mayors meets annually in the summer for a conference, and I find it to be a very, very valuable opportunity. This year, we are going to be presenting, the City of Sterling Heights is going to be presenting at a Jobs and Training and Workforce Committee regarding some of the innovations going on in and around Sterling Heights, particularly our Sterling University program, which we've talked about at several city council meetings and at strategic planning session this year. Unfortunately, the travel schedule is not going to allow me to be back for the city council meeting on July 2nd, so our Mayor Pro Tem Liz Sarowski is going to be chairing the meeting, but I will be back for the July 16th meeting. So I just did want to make that announcement that I won't be here. It will be for a city-related conference. So with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Support.
It's been moved and supported. Is there any discussion? If no discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. This meeting is adjourned, and thank you very much for coming out.